Sup folks, welcome to the part 18, of What If Deku, Run an Orphanage, Chapter 104, Game Plan Part 2. Fu sighed, as he headed over to Fuku's room. Why? Well, it had been a little bit since their meeting on making the game, and as the one managing that project, he needed to check in on everyone to see how much progress they made. First, he checked in with Ken and Mai. The two of them were currently working on the gameplay. Right now they'd have Ken create an in-game battle, using some stand-in models, and allow Mai to test it, giving her feedback and telling Ken what to change. It was a somewhat tedious process, made worse by Ken's 10-minute time limit, but they were making progress very steadily, and they said that after a week or two they should have the gameplay down, and could move on to minigame development. After that, he'd check in on Yami, and take his drawings and notes on the monsters for the game. Unfortunately, Yami's drawings, while not bad, weren't amazing, and would need to be taken to Fuku to get some improvements. Then he'd see Fuku, hand her Yami's drawings, and then check on her work, that being her writing for the story and side stories, her drawings of the world and environments, her redrawings of the monsters, and her drawings of the characters. Although Shiraku said she would handle the character designs, what she meant was their clothing, which to be fair was very important. Shiraku couldn't draw anything but clothes very well, so she'd leave it Fuku to draw the character, and then Shiraku would make an outfit for them. In other words, Fuku had a whole lot of work to do. He honestly felt bad for the girl. She likely felt trapped doing an awful amount of work. After all, given who Fuku was, there was no way she was going to back down or try to ask for less work. She was probably worried she'd disappoint someone. Depending on how things were going with her, he may have to intervene on her behalf. Fu sighed. Assuming she'll let me. Fuku was still a bit scared of him after the chocolate incident, and so she got very uncomfortable and defensive, more so than usual, whenever she was alone with him. So he may need to call in Kiba or something. Once Fu reached Fuku's room, he knocked on the door. Fuku, it's me Fu. I've come to check on your progress, and bring you some of Yami's drawings. Come in. Fu was shocked by how quick that response came. Normally when Fuku lets someone into her room, even Yuri, Kiba, or there is a bit of hesitation. But she responded almost instantly this time. And there was not a trace of fear in her voice. Something was off here. He went inside, and what he saw confirmed that thought. The room was filled to the brim with papers. Papers all over the place. On the floor, on the wall, there were garbage bags filled with papers, and her desk and table had huge stacks of papers on them. Fuku herself was working on her computer at her desk, typing furiously, looking even more disheveled than usual. Her hair was completely out of control, not that it was neat before, but now it looked like Fuku was no longer making any effort to take care of it. She had huge bags under her eyes, and her clothes looked like she'd been wearing them for a while. Papers, Fuku said firmly, holding out her hand towards Fu, while not looking away from the computer and continuing to type with one hand. Okay. Fu was a bit taken off guard by how out of character Fuku was acting. He handed her the papers, and the moment they touched her hand, she snatched them away, at remarkable speeds, and looked at them closely. She squinted at them, looking them over thoroughly, before putting them to the side. Is he rushing these? The lines are all wrong, and Fuku started rambling to herself, and Fu found himself lost pretty quickly. Fuku? Fu tried to get her attention. Huh? Fuku looked towards him as if she just remembered he was here. Oh, right, you have to check on my work. I'll send it to you in an email. You also have to send Shiraku the character designs. Fu reminded her. Right, I'll email her too, Fuku told him, getting started on the process. Okay. When was the last time you slept, or ate, or showered? Fu asked. Huh? Fuku blinked for a while as if Fu saying that broke her out of some kind of trance. She then lifted up her arm and smelled herself. Oh. Okay, shower time. I completely forgot about that. Wait. Fu's in my room? Yeah. I've been here the whole time. Fu gave her a curious look. Who do you think you've been talking to? I don't know, I was just in some kind of trance. Fuko answered nervously, blushingly heavily out of embarrassment. I was so focused on my work that I didn't really notice who I was working with. Ah, tunnel vision. Fu deduced. I think Kiba told me about that once. Something to do with archery. Oh yeah, Fuka recalled her experiences with archery. The whole world just kinda fades away, and the only thing I can focus on is the target. I guess the same thing happens whenever you get really into something, Fu noted. Well, at least you seem a lot less afraid of things when you're like that. Although you definitely need a schedule. If you keep working like this, then you're gonna end up like Dad. Fuka paled, as she imagined just collapsing like Izuku did. Although on second thought that didn't sound like such a terrible idea, because boy was she tired. Look, for now, I'll send those emails, and you can go take a shower then a nap, Fu told her. We can work on a work schedule for you tomorrow. Until then, no more working for today. Huh. But I still have so much to do, Fuko argued, sounding and looking desperate. I've only just gotten to the beginning of the third arc. I still haven't done any of the side quests, or character quests. And I only designed the first area. I still need to make a lot more. Yami's drawings need to get redrawn, and Shraku's waiting for me to give her those character designs and Fuku's rant stopped abruptly when Fu flicked her on the forehead. What was that for? Fuku pouted, looking at Fu with teary eyes while she rubbed her forehead. You were ranting, when you should be showering, Fu told her. This project doesn't even have a deadline. And while I appreciate you giving this your all, everyone appreciates that. We also care about you, and want you to take care of yourself. You are not repeating what happened to Dad. Now get in the shower and get to bed, or I will have Kiba come in here, and make you. Fuko turned pale as a sheet and dashed into the bathroom as fast as possible. Yes sir. Fu sighed and shook his head. This project is going to kill me. Good thing I can't really die then. Hey Ken, Fu said as he walked into Ken's room, finding the boy leisurely relaxing on his bed, listening to music on his phone. Yeah? Ken turned off his music and gave Fu his full attention. Something wrong? Funny you should be listening to music, because I realized we completely forgot to address the music in our game. Fu pointed out. Ah crap. Ken's eyes went wide, as he realized he'd forgotten something really important. Do we know anyone who can do good music? I mean, I've heard Jiro's pretty good at music, but I don't think she'd be willing to do a soundtrack for a game, Fu told him. And no one else would be a good fit, either. So I don't really know what we're gonna do. Neither do I, Ken admitted. After stating that neither of them knew what they were doing, there was a brief moment of silence as they both stared at each other, and one solution came to mind. Go to Izuku for help? Ken asked. We're going to Izuku for help. Fu agreed. So you need someone to make a soundtrack for the game. Izuku pondered. Ken and Fu were now in Izuku's office, sitting in two chairs in front of his desk. Yeah, no one around here really fits the bill for a composer, so we're kinda stuck, Ken admitted somewhat sheepishly. Think you can help us out? Izuku took a few minutes to think about the issue, before giving a solution. Well, when you finish the game, I can hire some musicians, send them the game, and they can create music for it. This way they can judge what music fits a certain area or character or event. You guys can listen to the tracks and see if you like them, and then you add them to the game, and ship it out. That sounds great. Ken cheered, looking ecstatic to have resolved this issue. Yeah, let's do that. Fu nodded. Well, I'm glad to finally have that sorted out. Thanks, Dad. Yeah, thanks Izuku. You're the man. Ken praised him, looking absolutely hyped. I'm doing my job. Izuku chuckled, blushing slightly at the praise as he gave them a huge grin. "I'm really overjoyed that you guys are doing a group project like this. Learning how to work together to accomplish a big goal. Especially one that'll support you all in the future. So I want to do everything in my power to make sure this goes well. Speaking of which, I made some calls, and I have something you may be interested in. We're putting All Might in the game," Ken shouted ecstatically. "What?" Currently, the development team, consisting of Kiba, Fu, Ken, Fuku, Yami, Amei, and Shraku, was once again gathered in Ken's room for another meeting. Everyone but Fu, who already knew this, and Yami, whose expression barely ever changed, looked absolutely flabbergasted. "What do you mean we're putting All Might in the game?" Fuku asked him, completely taken aback by this news. "I thought we couldn't use real people or heroes in the game because we don't have the rights to them or something?" Well, Izuku's friends with All Might, so he made some calls, and managed to buy the right to use All Might in our game, for super cheap. Ken explained, his body twitching with joy and excitement. "And not only that, Izuku called UA and we got permission to use the entire UA staff as well. Except for Midnight. If we put her in, we'd have to raise the rating of the game, so we're leaving her out. Not only that, but we got permission to use first-year UA students in the game as well, so long as we get them to sign a contract," Fu explained. "And if we release this game right after the sports festival, UA and the students will be on everyone's minds, meaning more people will buy a game with them in it, and that means more money for us. A lot more money. Oh yes." Shraku cheered, imaging all the cash coming in. "We're gonna be rich." "Aren't you guys already rich?" Amei asked. "But how are we going to fit them all in?" Kiba asked, not seeming as excited. In fact, she looked pretty skeptical of the idea. "Our game takes place in an alternate fantasy world, how are we gonna fit heroes from the real world into here?" "I dunno. Fuku's the writer, I'll leave it up to her." Ken shrugged. "Huh?" Fuku let out a confused, stressed, and tired noise from her mouth all at the same time. On the one hand, Kiba was right, it would be kinda weird to throw a new A stuff into a fantasy world. But on the other, money. So much money. Fortunately, Amei had an idea. "Why don't we make them summons?" Amei suggested casually. "Why don't we say that Eri the time-space god can summon heroes from across the multiverse for a moment to help in battle or something?" "That's perfect, thank you," Fuku shouted, letting out a sigh of relief. "Thank you so much. Also, I think we should make All Might a pre-order bonus," Amei suggested. "That way not only can get the pre-orders up, we can also subtly advertise that he's in the game, without making it the focus. Let's say that if you pre-order you get him at the start of the game, but if you don't you still get him in-game, but much later." "That feels a bit scummy," Kiba said skeptically. "But not too scummy," Amei pointed out. "Trust me, game companies have done much worse. And that'll make us a whole lot of money." "Sounds great to me," Ken said, giving her the thumbs up. "Let's do that. So now we have to decide who in 1A to ask to be in the game, and how to ask them," Fu said. "Obviously, we're not putting Bakugo Katsuki into the game. Can anyone add someone else who shouldn't be in it?" "Momo and Mineta," Shraku added. "As lovely as Momo is, her costume will make us have to increase the game's rating, so that's a no-go. And Mineta is apparently a huge pervert, so if he does something really bad, it might affect the game's sales." "Good point." Fu nodded, writing that down. "Anyone else have any objections?" Everyone shook their heads. "All right, well then how are we going to ask them?" Fu asked. "Most of them should just say yes if we ask, but I think Toda might say no because he's shy. Shinso will almost definitely say no, because he wants to be an underground hero, and won't even be in the sports festival so he can stay as secretive as possible. And Todoroki might say no because he's antisocial, and Yonda made him really upset, so he probably won't want to do us any favors. Well, I don't really care too much about Koda or Shinso, so that's fine, but we need Todoroki in this game, Ken stated. He's the number 2 hero's son, and he has a crazy cool quirk. He's gonna do great in the sports festival, which means more people will want to have him in a game. Which means more money. But how do we convince him? Shuraku asked, looking a bit worried. He doesn't need money, he doesn't care about clothes, and I don't know what we could offer him to get him to agree to this. For a while, the room was silent, before everyone eventually came to the same conclusion. Ask Izuku for help? Ken offered. Yeah. Everyone agreed. Alright, with that settled, I would like to know when I can get the first trailer for the game? Kiba asked him impatiently. I want to reveal the game's existence to the public with a trailer, so until then we can't really start advertising. Well, me and Ken should have most of the core gameplay things done in a couple of days. Fuku's finished enough of the plot and world design for us to put it in a trailer, Amai explained. Has Izuku finished negotiations about what consoles we can put it on? Yeah, he said it's gonna be on all 3 consoles, and PC. Fu explained. Although we will need to make the graphics for the Nintendo port a bit worse because their system isn't as powerful as Microsoft's or Sony's. Alright, and we have an idea of the release date, so the only thing we need is for Shuraku to finish up the designs for the characters in the beginning of the game, Amai said. Shuraku, what's your progress on that? I should have them done in a little less than a week. Shuraku estimated. I have to make sure they're absolutely perfect so more people want to buy the game. Great, so that means we should be able to put together a trailer in a week or 2, Amai said. Until then, I do still think we can advertise the game without revealing it yet, Fu added. By making Class 1A look cooler, we can make people want to purchase the game more. So, let's show them fighting us, or the Grim, and looking cool, and then have Kiba post them. No live streams, just pre-recorded videos, so we can cut out anything that may make them seem not so cool. Also don't overdo it, and make sure to still do plenty of regular videos, so people don't feel like you're selling out. As if my loyal minions would accuse me of such a thing. Kiba gasped, somewhat offended. That's a great idea, Fu. I'll have to get everyone in on it. Ken patted Fu on the back. Man, this is going great. I can feel my soul being consumed by capitalism. Kiba sighed, shaking her head. But at least I can give back to caretaker. Alright, everyone. Move out. Ken ordered. Time is money. Our money. Let's go. I'm guessing you want me to be in the game? Shito asked. Izuku and Shito were in Izuku's office, now late into the night, sitting across from each other on the couches, with some food and drinks on the table in front of them. Yeah. I'm guessing the others told you. Izuku rubbed the back of his head, in embarrassment, his face bright red. I know it's a bit not in good taste to ask someone a favor after you've done something terrible to them, but it's not your fault, Shito replied coldly, as he ate his soba. Given your position, I can't expect you to keep all of them in line. Not to mention one predicted that an 8-year-old would do something like that. I also don't blame the other children in the house either. Thank you. Izuku bowed. That being said, Shito added, sinking back into the couch. I don't particularly care about being in this game of theirs. I'm not exactly against it, but I don't see any real reason to agree to it either. I guess that's more than fair. Izuku sighed, before taking a deep breath and getting ready to deliver his pitch. Well, you can think of it as a publicity trade. A publicity trade? Shito repeated curiously. Yeah. We use you in the game and we get publicity from it. Izuku explained. And in return, people see that you lent your image these kids, all of whom have tragic backstories, and think better of you for it, which increases the public's opinion of you, which will be useful for becoming number 1. Believe me, making the public like you is a key element to being number 1. Wash is a great rescue hero, but everyone knows he's only in the top 10 because he's popular with kids. Shido mulled it over, staying silent while he contemplated the offer. The only sound coming out of him was the sound of him slurping soba. Izuku waited with bated breath for his response. After a few minutes, Shido finished his soba, and set the bowl down on the table, before looking up at Izuku and giving his response. I have been making attempts to talk more with my classmates, in an effort to change myself from how I used to be. And I figured out rather quickly that I am not good with people. So I'm going to need as much good publicity as I can get. So, is that a yes? Izuku asked, hesitantly. Yes, not to mention it'll likely get my father out of my face for a while, Shido added, and at this point, I want to interact with him as little as possible. That's completely fair. I'm glad to see you're doing well after what Yonda did to you, Izuku said to him, taking a folded contract out of his pocket. By the way, do you mind if I refer to her as a demon spawn? Shido asked. Izuku sighed. I'd like to say yes, but I don't think she cares, and she can read her thoughts, so it really doesn't matter what I answer here, does it? Demon spawn it is, Todoroki said, as he signed the contract. Chapter 105, 1.A. Versus Ojiro was regretting his life choices. Currently, the tailed U.A student was in the forest with Nara, literally in her shadow as Nara had transformed into humongous. Alright. Here I come, Nara said, charging towards Ojiro with her fist raised high. Time to focus, Ojiro thought as he jumped back, avoiding Nara's fist as it slammed into the ground where he'd been standing. Ojiro then dashed forward, jumping onto Nara's arm, running up to her head, and smacking her in the face with his tail. Nara grunted in pain as Ojiro's tail smacked her in the cheek like a whip before the boy himself jumped off her onto the ground. Ojiro didn't let up, and charged between her legs, and swiped the back of her leg with his tail. Whoa! Nara stumbled forward, trying not to trip, but Ojiro swiftly jumped up and tail slapped her in the back, breaking her balance completely, and causing her to fall on her face. Ojiro then used his tail to bounce himself high into the air and spun himself while he fell towards Nara. Tornado tail dance. As Nara tried to pull herself up, Ojiro slammed into the back of her neck. Wham! Oh you! Nara screamed, as her face was slammed into the ground, and she felt pain hit her neck hard. Ojiro propelled himself off of her neck with his tail and landed right next to her. Time out. Nara, are you okay? Oh you! Nara groaned, as she once again pulled her head out of the dirt. My neck. Yeah, I think we should call the fight, Ojiro said, turning to Fu who was recording the whole battle. That was fast. Gonna have to put that in a compilation. Fu said. Oh, Ken's never gonna let me hear the end of this. Nara groaned as she turned herself around, laying down and taking a minute to recover. I hate using this form. It's so big, and clumsy, and slow. It's like trying to move underwater. Well, that explains why this fight was so easy. Ojiro shook his head. The harder a form is to use, the more you have to train with it. Not less. If you're in need of pure power, you're going to want to know how to use this form. I know. Nara groaned. Ready Okuko? Netsu asked, giving her a wide smile, his fire burning brighter with excitement. Let's go Netsu. Okuko replied, returning his smile, her body covered in lighting as she used 12% full cowling. The two of them were facing off on rocky plains, with a lake nearby and the trees of the forest also very close. There were also some Goliaths nearby, standing by the lake and ready to put out any fires nearby. Alright, let's go. Netsu shouted. Let me show you something Taru taught me. Solar flare. Netsu's fire suddenly exploded in intensity, becoming a burning beacon of flames that spilled light all around him. Okuko immediately had to cover her eyes to keep from behind blinded, and knowing that she was wide open, she took a guess as to what Netsu's next move would be, and jumped to the left, avoiding a fire blast Netsu had thrown at her. The moment Okako hit the ground, she stomped down on the ground hard, causing the rocks to break apart and fly up. Okako waved her hand across the rocks, removing their gravity, and then spin-kicking them at Netsu. Netsu immediately then unleashed a powerful blast of flames, melting the rocks, and forcing Okako to dodge by jumping to the right. He even melted the rock. Now, what am I gonna do? Okako thought to herself. Okay. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed, Okako. You gotta think. How can I hit Netsu? What advantage do I have that he doesn't? His attacks are more powerful, I can't touch him at all. Netsu unleashed a barrage of fireballs at her, and Okako quickly dodged all of them, not letting even a single one touch her. That's right. Speed. Okako realized and quickly started building a path to victory around this. After dodging a few more fireballs and taking the time to come up with a plan, Okako swiftly ran towards the trees. Full cowling. 18%. Okako then proceeded to chop down a large group of trees with her hand, also passing her fingers over them to remove their gravity, and then proceed to quickly grab and throw them in succession at Netsu. Seeing about half a dozen trees coming at him quickly, Netsu put out both his arms in front of him and quickly charged up, in attack. Burning eraser cannon. Vroom. Netsu let out a huge blast of fire in front of him, that instantly burned through all the trees being thrown at him, as well as the trees, grass, dirt, and everything in the path of his attack. And it did what the name implied and erased everything in the general direction. Once Netsu's attack died down, he looked at the huge path of destruction that he'd made, with several trees around the burnt land being set on fire just by being grazed by it. Whoops! Before Netsu could fully lament how much damage he'd done, Okako dashed up to him holding a tree, and smacked him with it like a baseball bat. Splash! Netsu was sent flying by the attack, getting knocked into the lake, sinking into its depths. I really hope I didn't hit him too hard, Okako thought to herself, as she stared intently at the lake. If Netsu took more than half a minute to get out, then she'd call the match off and go make sure he was okay. Fortunately, she was worried for nothing, as the water around the area where Netsu got knocked into started to bubble and boil, and then Netsu shot out of it, flying into the air. After getting a few feet above the water, Netsu stopped and started clutching his ribs in the place where Okako had hit him. Hey hit? Man, you hit hard. That really hurt. Sorry. Did you want to stop the match? Okako asked him, her concern quickly returning. Are you kidding? This is fun. Netsu shouted. Let's keep going. Flame wall. Suddenly, Netsu's flames exploded around him, creating, as the name implied, a wall of flame. If she wanted to attack him, she'd need to find something more durable than wood, otherwise, it would get burned up before it even touched him. It was a shield made of fire, Netsu's best defense. However, it had a pretty massive drawback. Netsu unleashed a massive amount of fireballs at Okako, covering most of the area in fire. Okako put all her effort into dodging the attacks, quickly moving around them. However, given how many fireballs there were, a few did manage to brush her skin, and burned her a bit, causing her to wince, but she ignored the pain and pushed on through. Because pretty soon Netsu's weakness was going to rear its head. Netsu's breathing became heavier and heavier, getting more labored and rapid with each passing second, as it became harder and harder to breathe. Because Netsu's flame wall burned everything that approached him, including oxygen, and his attacks only made the situation worse for him. Netsu eventually stopped attacking her and had to focus on breathing, as the world started to get blurry. Okako swiftly noticed this and called out to him. Alright. Netsu, that's it. Lower your flames. Netsu almost immediately complied, quickly letting his flames simmer down, but even after that, it was hard to breathe because of how much oxygen he'd burned up in the area. Thankfully, he wouldn't be there for long, as Shiraku, who had been recording the fight, ran forward, and shot a web at Netsu, before dragging him towards the ground. Fortunately, Netsu's flames were weaker than normal thanks to the lack of oxygen, and she was able to bring him back down, with her web burning up. The moment Netsu hit the ground, he fell onto his knee and took in as much air as possible. "Deep breaths, Netsu. Deep breaths," Okako told him, kneeling down so she could stay close to him while making sure not to touch him. After a few minutes of recovering, eventually, Netsu's breathing returned to normal. Phew. He rolled onto the ground, exhausted from oxygen deprivation. "Does this mean I lose?" Okako gave him a sad smile. "Yeah. I'm pretty sure almost passing out counts as a loss. Sorry, buddy. It's fine. That was fun though. You're so fast I couldn't even hit you," Netsu said, smiling despite his loss. "Well, Elle didn't get out of this without a few burns," Okako said, showing off the burns on her body. "You almost got me a few times. Next time, I'll hit you," Netsu swore. "Maybe I'll even win." Okako smiled at him. "Maybe. Alright, my turn." Mina cheered, doing some stretches as she got ready for battle. On the other side of the training room, her opponent, Fu. "I hope you put up a good fight, Mina," Fu told her, before allowing Kyozai to cover his body. "Because we're not going easy." Mina smirked, before looking over at Shraku who was filming the fight. "I hope you're ready, boys and girls. Because Mina Ashido is gonna blow you away." "I hope so, it'll turn us an extra profit," Shraku thought. "Okay. Let the battle begin." Immediately, Fu shot out 4 tendrils at Mina. "Acid Veil." Mina waved her hand in front of her, making a shield of acid that immediately dissolved the tendrils that were coming at her from the front. One tendril went behind her, and Mina turned to dissolve it with more acid, but that left her open to having one of her legs grabbed by the last tendril that went under her acid shield. Fu pulled Mina to the ground, but before he could start dragging her forward, acid came out of her leg, dissolving the tendril, and then she immediately started break-dancing, spinning around with her arms while shooting acid from her legs, that destroyed the tendril. "Acid Hurricane!" Mina shouted, as she started spinning on her back, while shooting out more acid around her, moving forward while inside an acid tornado. Fu, rather than trying to attack, went on the defensive, and as Mina approached him, he jumped to the ceiling and stuck to it. Seeing that Fu changed positions, Mina stopped her attack, and jumped up, before taking aim. Acid shot. Mina let out a hail of acid bullets at Fu, and in response, Fu shot out chunks of Kyozai down at her. However, the acid easily dissolved his attack and kept going. The acid hit Fu's body, destroying his right arm, his legs, making a hole in his chest, and dissolving part of his head. "She's tougher than I thought," Fu thought to himself, as he quickly regenerated the damage done to him. "I'll have to change up my approach." Fu dropped to the ground, and jumped to the opposite side of the battlefield, and then unleashed a ton of tendrils at Mina. Literal dozens of them. Before Mina knew it, she was surrounded by tendrils, some coming from above, some down low, and many coming from her front and her back. "I've seen enough hentai to know where this is going," Mina giggled to herself. "No. Bad Mina. Focus." Immediately, Mina jumped on her back and started spinning. Acid Hurricane. She created another tornado of acid around herself, that dissolved every tendril that got near it. Mina started moving towards where Fu was, destroying every tendril in her way, but when she got to the point where Fu was, only to find that he wasn't there. "Huh? Where did he go?" Mina thought, trying to look around for him, but that didn't work out very well for 3 reasons. 1. There were tendrils everywhere, blocking her view. 2. It was hard to see through her thick acid, and 3. She was spinning. Uh-oh. If I don't find him, then my acid resistance will run out. And I'll be toast. Then again, I guess if I can't tell where he is, I'll have to hit everywhere. Acid shot. Mina shouted, unleashing acid shots in every direction. Fu, who had moved to the wall, was hit by a few of these but wasn't too worried, as he quickly regenerated from the damage. If she keeps it up, she'll lose her resistance quicker, and then I'll gotcha. Mina smirked, as she jumped up, flipped upward, and raised her hand. Acid whip. Mina made a long trail of acid, squirt out of her hand, and brought it down on Fu, cutting him in half. Acid shot. She then unleashed a torrent of acid bullets on him, turning Fu into mincemeat. How did she figure out where I was? Fu wondered as he regenerated, still having his tendrils go after the now exposed Mina. The tendrils grabbed Mina's arms and legs, re-stinging her in the air, as more tendrils came to strike her. However, Mina, as she did before, quickly dissolved the tendrils, and spun around, shooting more acid to dissolve the tendrils around her, and as she fell to the ground, she shot more acid at Fu, dissolving more of his body. Mina fell to the ground and created acid underneath her, to allow her to slide towards Fu's regenerating remains. Fu shot out more tendrils at her, to try and keep her away. But Mina jumped up, shot acid down at them, before landing on top of Fu, who was just a head and most of a torso. At this point, Mina smirked at him, as she pointed her hands down at him. I win. I guess you do. Fu agreed with a sigh. Mina was one of the people who could actually kill him without wearing down his regeneration. All she had to do was completely dissolve his body, which right now she was in a position to do. How did you figure out where I was? You shouldn't have been able to see me? Nope, but I could hear you, Mina explained. When my acid hit you, it took a bit longer to dissolve you than it did your tentacles. So I just listened, and when I heard something dissolving for a bit longer than normal, I knew I got you. Huh. Fu gave her a somewhat surprised look as his body was now mostly regenerated. I really didn't think you were smart enough to do that. I may not be smart, but if I know one subject well, it's acid, Mina explained proudly. I kinda have to, or I'd be a pretty bad hero. Fair enough, I guess. Fu shrugged now that he had arms again. Now can you get me a new set of clothes? You destroyed the ones I was wearing. Author's notes. I'll be honest, I am kind of running out of ideas for good 1A versus the kids fights. Mostly because this is still back before 1A came up with a lot of their different techniques. I think I actually gave Mina moves she shouldn't have at this time. It also doesn't help that in a 1v1 fight, a lot of 1A can't really do anything to the kids. I almost wish I let Bakugo be here because he would have made for some pretty cool fights. I couldn't do that for story reasons, but would have been cool. Speaking of Bakugo, I have something planned for him and 1B. Don't worry, it should be quick. If you guys have any suggestions for 1A versus the kids fights, then please leave some. 1A will be leaving soon, so I gotta make sure I do a lot with them. And before I go, I want to address something. Some people brought up how it was dangerous for Todoroki and Okuko to fight each other, saying they could have killed each other, and somewhat brought up the brutal nature in which the Hound handled 1B. And I'm sure I'll get some comments about how Okuko hit Netsu with a tree. Guys, have you seen the anime? Do you remember what UA does to their students, and what the students do to each other? Tokoyami has mushrooms grown in his throat, Todoroki gets punched by a fist made of red-hot steel, Ida kicks a guy's head at the speed of sound, Udate makes them fight building-sized robots, Snipe just shoots them, they make Deku and Bakugo fight All Might, Aizawa hangs Todoroki over a bunch of spikes, and do I even need to mention Izuku versus Todoroki? Please do not take the literal cartoon violence seriously during the sparring matches. Have faith that the characters aren't gonna kill each other. But what about Kiba versus Netsu? You ask. What about the time Izuku said it was too dangerous for them to fight each other because they'd hurt each other too much? Okuko versus Netsu and Kiba versus Netsu is very different. Firstly, they are fighting outside, meaning Okuko can dodge more of Netsu's attack, and Netsu has a harder time suffocating himself and breathing in the smoke of his own attacks. Secondly, Kiba is both stronger than Okuko and has much less self-control. It's very possible for Kiba to lose herself in a fight and accidentally punch a hole through Netsu's chest. For Okako, not so much. Obviously, if we applied real-world logic, Okako would definitely be strong enough to punch through the chest of someone without enhanced durability. But please, remember that in MHA if you work out regularly, you can also take a rocket to the chest, so Netsu is fine. Chapter 106, Getting Over It with Ndo Monoma. Kendo Itsuka sighed. I'm starting to resent one a little bit, and I'm not sure if that's Bakugo's fault or Monoma's. Class 1B generally got along pretty well. Sure, they had some small arguments every now and again, but as class rep, Kendo quickly dealt with them, and most of the time the class had a positive vibe. And then 1A went on a long field trip to the Midoriya Foundation and left Bakugo behind for them to deal with. Now despite his reputation, they didn't immediately hate Bakugo while Monoma did, but that's only because of his weird 1A thing. Because Kendo liked to think her class was an accepting group, that they wouldn't immediately judge people based on things like that. She never got the chance to actually see if that was true, because the moment Bakugo ended up in their class, he immediately let his dislike of being in a class of rejects barely able to pass the piss-easy entrance exam filled with people that had shitty quirks that would make a sidekick burst out laughing. And that was just the first 30 seconds. It had now been about 2 weeks, and everyone had had enough of shit by week 1. Even Pony, and she was the nice one. He absolutely destroyed them in training sessions, oftentimes going way overboard, and then immediately gloating about how great he was and about how trash they were. Every time anyone tried talking to him, he would call them shitty extras. And may whatever higher power existed in the world help the person that tried calling him out. He would curse at the top of his lungs, let off explosions and threaten murder until Vlad told him to cut it out. As for whenever he was put into a group exercise, you just couldn't work with him. He literally would not cooperate, so one of two things happened. 1. Bakugo would do the whole exercise by himself and win, or 2. Bakugo would try to do the whole exercise by himself, and fail because it wasn't a combat-centric exercise and combat was all Bakugo was good for. Overall, the more time Kendo spent with Bakugo, the more questions she had. How did 1A put up with this for months? How did Midoriya put up with this for years? How did UA expect them to deal with this for 3 years? Why didn't UA just expel him for the obvious behavioral issues he had? Why didn't Midoriya press charges and drop-kick Bakugo's career off a cliff? Why has no one decided to really take Bakugo down a peg? Alright class, today there's something special for you all, Vlad said, taking his place in front of the classroom, with his hand on a stack of papers. Do you all remember the Midoriya Foundation? Immediately they could feel the mood in the room drop, half because they recalled the last time they went there, and half because of the sheer hatred coming off of Bakugo the moment that name was said. Sensei, I don't think we can forget that place. Setsuna cringed. Are we gonna do that test again? Togaru asked enthusiastically. I'm itching for a rematch with Clifford the big black asshole. Why on earth would you want to go back there? Manga asked, his head turning into a question mark and exclamation point. If I never have to face that hellhound again, it'll be too soon. No more demons. Pony said, shaking her head. Fortunately, we won't be sending you back there, Vlad assured them. Instead, we have something much more pleasant. You see, the Midoriya Foundation has a technopath in their care, who has decided to make a video game. Not a small one either. Thanks to their quirk, they can easily develop games that would normally require massive studios to create. As such, Midoriya himself asked if UA would cooperate and lend them the rights to use our staff and the first-year students. This includes 1A and of course, all of you. Except for Bakugo, for obvious reasons. Whoa. Really? Manga shouted, his head now just an exclamation point. We're gonna be in a video game? Aw heck yeah. Togaru shouted, pumping his fist into the air. Immediately the whole class broke into excited chatter, the mood now higher than it was before as everyone voiced their excitement. And naturally, Since everyone was a bit too happy for his liking, Bakugo came in and ruined it. "What the hell are all you extras so happy about?" Bakugo shouted, causing everyone to go quiet. "You get told you're gonna be in a shitty game made by one of Deku's brats, and you get all happy. That's fucking pathetic." There was a moment of silence, as everyone took in what he said, and then immediately ignored it and went back to talking. Hey, don't fucking ignore me, you damn extras!" Bakugo shouted, unleashing some explosions from his hands to try and get attention, but to no avail, as everyone was done giving him what he wanted. Attention and validation, namely. "Now everyone settle down," Vlad said, causing the class to go quiet. "This is a great opportunity for you to learn about publicity, image rights, and contracts. Speaking of which, these are the contracts you have to sign in order to lend your image to the game. Read them thoroughly, there'll be a test about its contents later. You've grown many of the students. Grown all you want, but signing contracts is an important part of being a hero. Don't start, Bakugo," Vlad warned when he saw Bakugo open his mouth. "If you don't learn how to navigate these things, then you'll end up in a horrible situation. I've heard of certain heroes being swindled out of billions of yen from misreading contracts, so read this one carefully. Obviously, Midoriya isn't going to try and scam you, but this is just so you can get familiar with contracts." "Yes, sensei," responded most of the class. "Bakugo, I'll be giving you a different contract. It doesn't do or mean anything, it's just so you don't get left out of this," Vlad told him. "TCH. I don't need to fucking practice how to sign contracts. I'm not a fucking idiot like the rest of these dipshits," Bakugo seethed. "And besides, I'm gonna hire someone to do all that tedious shit." "Not right after you graduate, you're not," Vlad told him firmly. "Most heroes work as sidekicks for at least a few years before they move on to full-time hero work, in which they are typically the ones in charge of the paperwork. And even if you work as a hero right out of the gate, you're still going to need to work for a few years before you can grow an agency big enough to have people work for you. Yes, even All Might had to do his own paperwork for a while. But even if you could completely avoid signing contracts and put all the work on someone else, for the most important things, it's better if you do it yourself, because putting it in the hands of someone else is a big risk. Especially for someone who very easily earns the contempt of other people, like Bakugo." Bakugo growled but didn't say anything in response. His typical way of saying "you're right but I'll never admit it." Anyway, as I said before, look them over thoroughly. Take in every legal phrase and word. If you don't understand something, Google it, Vlad told them, before picking up the papers and handing them out. After that, the rest of the class was spent quietly studying contracts and signing where needed. Now it was lunchtime, and Bakugo was sure that 1B was down in the lunchroom, merrily celebrating being in a video game. Not that Bakugo would know, seeing as he was currently on the roof, eating his lunch alone as usual. TCH. What the fuck is up with all these fucking extras? Bakugo growled to himself. They think they're fucking better than me. Bakugo just didn't understand what was going on. Everyone, literally, everyone at UA looked at him the same way. Like he was lower than dirt. Like they were better than him even with their shitty quirks. Even after he beat the shit out of them, they all still looked down on him. Why? Ever since he moved away from his old school, nothing has been the same. No one respected him anymore. No one tried sucking up to him. No one knew their damn place. And he refused to listen to that he was in a bubble crap because there was still something that was absolute. People respected strength. Both the strength of might and strength of will. Mirko, Hawks, even Endeavor. And, especially All Might. People practically worshipped All Might for his strength. Even some villains loved him. Even all over the world, someone like Star and Stripe was considered an icon for women around the world. The only people with power that didn't get respect were villains. and he wasn't one of those. Villains could have physical strength, but not the strength of will. They couldn't stop themselves from indulging their urges. Their urges to steal, urges to maim, urges to kill. He could. There were so many things he wanted to do, but he had the strength to stop himself. So what if he kicked Deku around a few times, but that was because the fucker looked down on him. And he still did. But now it was different. Now Deku had power. Bakugo lived his life with a gun pointed to his head, and Deku's hand on the trigger. At any point, he could pull it, and end him. But he didn't. Why? Because he was waiting for him to fail. He gave him a chance to succeed, so it would be all the sweeter when he lost himself, and broke one of his arbitrary rules. Then he'd pull the trigger, and end his dream. Well, Bakugo was going to make him regret giving him the chance. Because Bakugo was going to become stronger than even All Might, and then no one would give a shit about what happened in his past. No one will give a shit about anything Deku has to say. As it should be. Suddenly, Bakugo's thoughts were interpreted, when the door to the roof burst open, and Monoma strutted out. Well, if it isn't no one's favorite main character, Monoma said cheekily, giving him a shit-eating grin. Fuck off, leech. Bakugo snarled at him, once again popping off some explosions to try and intimidate him, but to no avail, as Monoma continued to strut up to him without a care in the world. Now, no need for the show, we both know what'll happen if they see even a singe on me. Monoma chuckled, looking down on Bakugo, who's sitting against a wall. Bakugo got up, and glared at Monoma, not saying a word because he knew he was right. I can only imagine how scary you must have been in your prime, Monoma said cockily. What the fuck does that mean? I am in my prime. Bakugo shouted in his face. No, you are not. Monoma replied, his grin growing even wider. Your prime was back in middle school. Back when you could do whatever you wanted. Back when you were surrounded by background characters and minor villains. Enablers who allowed you to think that people would like you just because you have a strong quirk. Although to be honest, no one ever really liked you, did they? Shut up, Bakugo growled, his palms smoking with rage. Make me. Monoma challenged. You sparring match after classes today. You're fucking on. Bakugo smirked, overjoyed at getting a chance to kick Monoma's smug ass. I've kicked your ass before, and I'll do it again. Last time I made a mistake. One I won't be repeating. Momona stated confidently. This time, we'll show you just how much better 1B is to your arrogant 1A ass. Bring it. Bakugo challenged. This is stupid, Kendo said. Bakugo and Monoma were staring each other down in one of U.As rocky arenas. Both boys were in their hero costumes, and ready to throw down. On the side was the rest of 1B, sitting on the bleachers and spectating. What are you talking about? It's about time that asshole got put in his place. Togaru shouted. Beat him up. Pony cheered. Don't lose again, Monoma. Setsu yelled. Shut it, extras. Bakugo snarled at them. Don't worry everyone, Monoma said with confidence, his grin never leaving his face. I have a foolproof plan. Oh really? Bakugo cackled, a psychotic grin plastered on his face. He crouched down and got ready to fight. Come at me. Monoma smirked, and rolled back his sleeves, revealing he had copied Huririn's quirk, Scales. Hey! That idiot just showed me his entire hand. Bakugo thought to himself. He knew Monoma could, as of now, only store 3 quirks. The first was Scales, which he'd just shown him. He was almost certain the second would be Steel because it was one of the few half-decent quirks in this class and would allow him to fight him for a little bit, and of course, he was going to try and copy his quirk. Because duh. Monoma tried beating him with his own quirk before. And he failed because Bakugo was just so much better at handling it. This match was decided before it even started. Immediately Monoma opened fire and launched dozens of Scales at Bakugo, like bullets coming from his arm. Bakugo dodged the scales, using his explosions to propel himself forward, expertly dodging the scales, exploding himself left and right to dodge the scales, quickly getting himself close to Monoma. Once Bakugo got too close, Monoma stopped using scales and started using steel, covering his body in steel. Predictable. Bakugo smirked, as he launched himself at Monoma, and tried to launch an explosion in his face. Monoma ducked and allowed Bakugo to fly over him. Bakugo then used his explosions to shift himself mid-air, positioning himself above Monoma and was about to unleash another blast. Monoma rolled to the side just in time. The explosion Bakugo unleashed into the ground, grazing his arm but not doing too much damage thanks to steel. He then quickly turned off steel, and used scale again, shooting more scales at Bakugo. Bakugo used an explosion to push himself out of the way, barely dodging the scales, before continuing to fly across the arena, Monoma forcing him back using scales, trying to keep him at a distance. "Hey! Fucker hasn't even touched me yet." Bakugo smirked as he glided around the arena. "I just need to get close to him and start laying it on." Bakugo rocketed up into the air, dodging more scales, before letting off a much bigger explosion behind him, blasting himself towards Monoma much faster. Monoma's eyes widened, as Bakugo came at him. He had no time to switch to steel, so he just put both his scale-covered arms in front of him, and took a small jump. Boom. Bakugo came at him, and blasted Monoma with a huge explosion, easily shattering the scale armor on his arms, and doing quite a bit of damage to his arms, leaving burns and bruises on them. Since Momono wasn't touching the ground, he was blasted way back, rolling across the ground away from Bakugo, as he switched from scales to steel once again. Monoma flipped himself upright, and dug his fingers into the ground, stopping himself from getting blasted back further. However, Bakugo was relentless, and he was only a foot away from Monoma when he finally got his bearings and got to his feet. Boom. Monoma grit his teeth as he took an explosion to the chest. Steel protected him from the heat, but the force of the explosion was so powerful not even steel could defend him completely. He tried to rush forward and grab Bakugo's arm, but Bakugo exploded himself out of Monoma's range, before exploding himself forward and blasting him in the face. Boom. Boom. Monoma kept trying to reach for Bakugo, trying to grab him, but Bakugo was too mobile, and always retaliated, with a powerful explosion. Kaboom! Bakugo unleashed an even more powerful explosion, right at Monoma's chest, and knocked him to the ground. Monoma groaned, wincing in pain as his body was now a pile of hot, smoking metal, breathing heavily on the ground. Bakugo pointed his palms at his face. "You lose, leech. You didn't even manage to touch me this time." Monoma gave a pained laugh, while he still tried to catch his breath. "You really are an idiot." "That's enough, Bakugo." His kendo got up and tried to intervene, but Monoma cut her off. "Your quirk is amazing, really. But it'll only get you so far." Monoma continued as he deactivated steel. "This whole battle has been one big representation of your entire life. Using sheer power to get what you want, dominating those around you, while looking down on them. Doing whatever you want, until suddenly then, Bakugo's gauntlets glowed purple, and Bakugo's arms were forcibly pointed at his chest. It all blows up in your face," Monoma smirked. Bakugo only had time to look down in horror, as the pins on his gauntlets were pulled. Crack boom! An explosion bigger than any before detonated, point blank, at Bakugo's chest, enveloping him completely, and making a path of destruction in the direction the gauntlets were fired at. That ended with the blast hitting the back wall of the training area, and breaking it open. When the blast and the smoke died down, Bakugo could be seen on the floor outside the training area, bloody, bruised, burned, and beaten, barely holding to consciousness. "Oh!" Bakugo groaned, as he fought to stay conscious. The only thing keeping his mind off the incredible pain he was in was the sheer shock and anger he felt right after Monoma pulled that stunt. Ah ha 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 ha. Monoma laughed, as he pulled himself to his feet. Like I said, Bakugo. Your quirk is amazing. You of all people are definitely a main character. But even a main character can lose to a supporting character if their story is shit. Woo. Most of his classmates cheered, celebrating Monoma's victory, with some of them even running out of the bleachers towards him. Holy shit, he actually won. Manga shouted, his head turned into an exclamation point. Heck yeah, you're the fucking man. Togaru shouted as he and a few more of his classmates surrounded Monoma, lifting him up to celebrate his victory. You kick butt. Pony cheered. About time that bastard got put in his place. Shihai yelled. Hey, could you guys celebrate after we get Bakugo to Recovery Girl? Kendo shouted as she and Ibara ran over to Bakugo. Ibara, you get his legs and I'll get his head. Oh please, he's fine. He hates us too much to die. Setsuna said. Kendo sighed, as she and Ibara picked up Bakugo, and she saw him glare angrily at her. Put me down. I can still fight you fuckers. Bakugo wheezed, barely getting out the words, before coughing up blood. The fact that you are still conscious is amazing. But I really need you to shut up and accept your defeat like a man, while we get you to Recovery Girl. Kendo told him. Shut up. Bakugo tried to move, but his body wouldn't respond. His muscles wouldn't move. His body had accepted defeat even if his mind would not. Kendo sighed. Ibara, cover his mouth please. Ibara immediately used her hair to cover his mouth in vines. Thank you, Kendo told her. Believe me, I was doing us all a favor. Ibara retorted. May God help this lost soul, because I think he is beyond the aid of mortal men. Well, hopefully, this humbles him a little bit, Kendo muttered, as she and Ibara rushed to Recovery Girl. I can't believe you actually pulled it off. Tetsu shouted in awe. Well, it was pretty simple. Once I showed him I had steel and scale, he, being the arrogant prick he is, would assume I would save one space for his own quirk. When in actuality, I was hiding Poltergeist, saving it for just the right moment. Monoma explained. I just needed to get him to sweat enough to charge the gauntlets. Free cheers for Monoma. Togaru shouted. Monoma, 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 Monoma. Some of the class cheered as they tossed Monoma in the air. Monoma smiled contently. He's sure that soon after this, he'd go back to being a side character. A support for everyone else. But for now, he could enjoy the spotlight, and the feeling of putting an asshole in his place. Hopefully, by the time Bakugo returned to 1A, the experience of getting defeated by 3 great quirks will have humbled him. Just a little bit. Author's notes. Okay, so please remember this is before both classes have trained up their quirks. Monoma can only copy 3 quirks right now, instead of 4 like what he's currently capable of in canon. Bakugo doesn't have AP shot or many of his other moves. Just wanted to get that out of the way. Chapter 107, Rules of the House. Hello, my minions, and welcome back to another video of mine. Kiba announced to the camera, as another live stream began. The video had her in the corner of the screen, with the rest of the screen pitch black. Now, my ever-great caretaker has released an official set of rules for all of us to follow, Kiba explained. And he has put it on a big board in the main hall. However, I thought of something. Why just look at it, when I can make a video, and share this with all of you? Already thinking like a content creator. Yes, the why do anything off camera mentality. Yes, more content. I would legit watch a video of Kiba sleeping. Whoop whoop. That's the sound of the police. Of course, I will be doing my best to abide by these rules, because while the great Kiba is bound by now rules, I owe caretaker a great deal, so I will comply to his word, Kiba told them. Now, without further ado, let's see what we have in store. I asked caretaker to send us a Google Doc of these rules, and it should be coming on screen now. The rest of the screen was now active, showing a blank white document. I had Fu space everything apart, so no one reads ahead, Kiba explained. Now, let's begin. Kiba scrolled down and came upon the first rule. Rule 1, do not eat, eviscerate, or otherwise tear apart Fu's flesh, bones, and organs in the house, without setting up the plastic sheets. The resulting punishment for breaking this rule will be cleaning up the messy pile in blood and flesh you made. Lmao, what? I love how the first rule is, no cannibalism or dismemberment, in the house. And not because of the obvious reason you wouldn't want that, but because it makes a mess. Imagine having to get blood out of a carpet at 7 years old. Can Kiba still drain blood vampire style? Oh. Kiba cringed. This is going to be a rather difficult rule to follow. You see, smashing apart Fu's body is well, it just feels right. Something about the way his limbs come off is just relaxing. Why is this not alarming? Someone should compile a bunch of clips of Kiba and put them together with no context. Mind you, this only applies to Fu, because he can grow his limbs back. Kiba quickly clarified. Anyway, I will attempt to keep Fu's flesh intact from now on. Next rule. The screen scrolled down and showed the next rule. Rule 2, no performing psychological experiments without consent. If you don't know what this means, no messing with a person to see how they react, without asking them if this is okay. I was expecting a lot of things out of this. This was not one of them. What? Well, I was expecting to not expect something, so I expected this. What's the story behind this? Yes. Apparently, Yonda and Yami were trying to do something with Kyoko to figure out why she's so miserable all the time. Kiba explained casually. Didn't end well, and Kyoko had a breakdown. Don't worry, she's fine now. Well, about as fine as she normally is. She's still in desperate need of mental help, but who isn't? I feel that Lady Kiba. I have never met a person who was mentally stable. All jokes aside, is Izuku Midoriya getting these kids any mental help? Kiba scowled as she read that last comment. I'll have you know, caretaker is doing everything in his power to make sure we are being taken care of both physically and mentally. Currently, he is going through a prolonged interview with a therapist and is preparing to have all of us receive mental help. So I would appreciate it if you'd keep such questions to yourself. She got so defensive, it's so cute. Defensive Kiba is so kawaii. Such a daddy's girl. I am not a daddy's girl. Kiba pouted, crossing her arms, her face red as a tomato. I'm just not an ungrateful whelp who doesn't appreciate what she's been given. I know caretaker looks out for us with all his might, so I happen to have an issue with those who suggest otherwise. It's okay, Lady Kiba, we understand. Honestly, I get it. I have someone who does a lot, and I mean a lot for me, so I'd get really angry at anyone who suggested they weren't treating me right. We support daddy's girl, Lady Kiba. Moving on. Shouted a very embarrassed Kiba. The screen scrolled down, showing the next rule. Rule 3, no fighting outside of spars. You must always ask permission to spar with someone. And you are only allowed to do it inside the training room, and in the forest. Lastly, you must also be observed by an adult, me, or a seer. This rule is rather obvious, although needed, Kiba stated. I recall the time Shiraku and Sanson got into a fight over Sanson's lack of clothing, and they destroyed at least 3 rooms. I cannot imagine how much of a headache Midoriya gets dealing with that. The shove fight that could destroy a small house. I never really thought of it before, but Sanson is just always naked, isn't she? Dude, she's a liquid. Is a glass of water naked? Well, no, because it's in a glass. What construction company does Midoriya use? Or companies rather, because there's no way he only has one on call. Ah, what a wonderful question. Kiba's face lit up, as she saw a wonderful opportunity to talk about Hokuko's family. Caretaker primarily uses the services of the Uraraka Construction Company. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because it's run by the parents of Hokuko Uraraka. You a student, and soon to be #1 hero, until I usurp her later on. Ah, yes, nepotism. Good to know that's still alive and kicking. Is Papa Midoriya simping? I mean, if you're trying to get a girl, being the one that pays her bills is not a bad way to go about it. Let the shipping begin. Now, caretaker hired them because they are hard workers, who produce good results, Kiba told them. That being said, if Okako would want to take this as a romantic gesture, I would not be opposed. Daughter approved. Make it canon. Please stop shipping real people together. Well, I believe we've lingered here long enough. It is time to move on, Kiba said as she scrolled down to the next rule. Rule 4, you are not allowed to glomp Netsu, under any circumstances. Who thought glomping the kid that was always on fire was a good idea? Lmao. Yeah, tried this once. Kiba grimaced. It didn't end well, to say the least. Moving on. She scrolled down once more, to the next rule. Rule 5. Under no circumstance are you allowed to inhale Fuku's fear gas. Fear gas? Oh, so that's Fuku's quirk. That sounds horribly dangerous. Which I guess shouldn't be surprising, considering this a place for dangerous children. Yeah, Fuku's quirk lets her emit a gas that makes you experience a nightmare in real life. Your ability to reason will be suppressed, and you'll hallucinate your worst fears, Kiba explained begrudgingly in a rushed way. That sounds like actual torture. Holy shit, that sounds terrible. I think I'd literally rather die than breathe that in. Look, I would rather we not linger on this topic. Fuku dislikes her quirk, and it has caused her a lot of pain. So let's move on, Kiba stated firmly, sounding a bit frustrated. As Kiba was talking, she moved to the next rule, not wanting to linger on this topic. Rule 6, no using Fu's head as a ball or a decoration. I knew they'd try that at some point. This is unsurprising, and I'm not sure how to feel about that. Hooray to the desensitization of violence. Queen Crimson, heads don't actually make very good balls. They don't bounce. But they do make great decorations. I'm really beginning to think Queen Crimson may be a psychopath. So I may have attempted to do both these things at some point, Kiba admitted, blushing a bit with embarrassment. Simply out of curiosity. It didn't end well. Moving on. Rule 7, no feeding Fu and Kyozai chocolate. Ever. Oh, this is a fun one. Apparently, chocolate is like a drug to Kyozai, and it caused some kind reaction in Fu's brain that causes them to go berserk. Kiba explained. He accidentally ate one of Fuku's delicious chocolate chip cookies, and just went crazy. Fuku's the only one that's seen it before. I really want to see what it's like, but apparently, after the craze is over, it causes Fu to die temporarily, and caretaker would rather not see what happens if we try that multiple times. Dies temporarily. Only in this house. Man. Poor Fu. Can't enjoy chocolate. Fu can't enjoy any foods. He can't taste. Poor Fuku, she just wanted to make cookies, and she sees a mess of flesh and black tendrils going insane. So Fu's like a dog? That last comment sent Kiba into a giggle fit, as she tried suppressing her laughter. Yes, I suppose he is. My most loyal of hounds. Well, if a dog gets better grades than you, what does that make you? Fu asked off-screen. Oh. Fu did not take that lying down LOL. Shots fired. Kiba's smile immediately turned into a scowl, and she stuck her tongue out at Fu. Next rule. Rule 8, do not touch Eri while her quirk is active. If you see Eri's quirk is active, get as far away from her as possible, and inform me immediately. Not allowed to explain this one, Kiba said, quickly. Moving on. Rule 9, if you see Ken has turned into a ghost, run. Do not attempt to talk, or reason with him. Just run. Yes, apparently Ken has a 10th transformation, called Ghost Freak, which he can 'T/won't use, Kiba explained. Most of Ken's transformations change his personality in some way. Ghost Freak just makes him super angry and hostile, so he'll do some terrible things that he wouldn't normally do otherwise. Like attack someone. So that's why he's an OPC. I was so confused because he didn't seem all that dangerous. This place is so much fun to watch, but at the same time, things like this are why I could never live here. What's up Nara then? Nara? Oh, she's not dangerous. She's only here because Ken is here. Kiba explained. And I wouldn't worry too much about Ghost Freak. Ken never wants to transform into Ghost Freak and he can't even if he did. The Omnitrix is supposed to keep him from turning into Ghost Freak, but it can malfunction if he gets too stressed, so it's still possible for him to accidentally turn into him. But even then, he can only be transformed to 10 minutes, so it's not as bad as it sounds. Even if it's only for 10 minutes, I wouldn't want to try and run from something that can go through walls. I would be panicking and screaming the whole time. I can only imagine it must feel terrible to be so angry and hateful. Dust to dust. Not really, I feel fine. Next rule. Kiba said as she scrolled down again. Rule 10, do not, ever, eat Yami's grim batter, or put it anywhere near your mouth. This can lead to a grim being formed inside your body. If you suspect you've eaten some of Yami's grim batter, tell him immediately so he can stop the process, and get to the medical wing immediately. Oh god, what a way to go out. Fuck. Imagine that you feel some liquid go down your throat and into your stomach, and then it starts to expand and grow, or you feel something moving around trying to get out, ripping your body apart as a nightmare monster bursts from your body like fucking xenomorph. Fuck you buddy. Welp, looks like I know what's gonna be in me nightmares for the next few months. I didn't think Yami could get any scarier. I was wrong. I was very, very wrong. Don't really need to explain anything about this. It's pretty straightforward. Kiba shrugged. Next rule. Rule 11, girls, do not allow Sansan anywhere near your private parts. I would like it if you all kept away from that area in general. But this is especially dangerous as it can result in an unwanted pregnancy. Wait, what the actual fuck? How? Lady Kiba, please explain. Okay, so. Apparently, you know how we use chemicals to force Sansan to not be so acidy all the time? Kiba started to explain. Well, apparently, how that works, is that the chemicals force her body into mating mode. She's no longer acidic. But now she can get girls pregnant if she's not careful. Still, what the fuck? So she's made of jello sperm. Well, nature finds a way. I've seen enough hentai to know where that would go. Listen, I know this is about children, but the potential joke is right there, and I literally can't stop myself. Ban me, I won't be mad. Well, before the inappropriate jokes continue, we should move on, Kiba said, scrolling down. Rule 12, do not, under any circumstance, surprise Fuku. Yeah, that's pretty obvious. Imagine. Surprise, oh god, why? Don't really need to explain this one. Only an idiot would try this. Kiba said. Next rule. Rule 13, do not sneak into Kai's room without him knowing, or while he's asleep. Again, another rule that has obvious consequences. Kiba said. If Kai doesn't know you're there, he might squash you. Of course, I, the great Kiba, can withstand this, but many of my squishier siblings cannot. Kai could roll over in his sleep, and commit a massacre. It really is a miracle he hasn't accidentally killed anyone. Good on him. Kai is a very good boy. Kiba moved on to the next rule. Rule 14, do not drug people. This includes using the Mei's candies on people without consent. Okay. Here's something else I didn't expect. What does that mean? Candies? Oh, that's right, I've never explained Mei's quirk, did I? It's called mood candy. Kiba explained. She makes candies that can influence your mood. She can make you calm, angry, sad, happy, or make you fall in love. Apparently, some of my siblings have been misusing these candies, and as such caretaker has gotten quite strict about their distribution. As he should. That sounds like a serious problem. In most contexts, this would be taken way more seriously. But in a house where death is a constant threat that no one seems to acknowledge, this is just a drop in the bucket. Well, that appears to be the end of the list for now, Kiba said. Caretaker said he will continue updating the rules as time goes on. Most likely soon, given what goes on within this household. With that said, my time with you has come to an end today. Do not despair, I will return soon to grace you all with my presence. In order to look upon my face as soon as possible, please remember to subscribe to both my channels. Farewell for now. Author's note: alright, a few more chapters, and we can head on to the final arc before the League attacks. Just to be clear, once the next arc is over, we won't be going to the attack immediately. I have some setup to do before then. I have to bring back some characters and introduce a new one before we get on to the attack. Because they play important roles in that arc. Chapter 108, Game Plan Part 3. Author's note: hey everyone. Just wanted to say that this fic is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends. That's right, for whatever reason, despite being extremely well known, Raid has become so desperate for attention they broke down my front door, threw money into my face, and threatened my family unless I did this, so here we go. Come play Raid Shadow Legends, and get one of the many unique characters, I mean champions, they have to offer, such as generic-looking orcs, generic-looking hot woman, and of course 5 billion guys in generic-looking suits of armors. Fall in love with our unique combat system. This is just a worse version of something you'd find in an actual game, but since it's more convenient because it's on a phone, you'll get addicted to it anyway. Play in the genetically named arena, where you can fight other players. There you can experience what it's like to get slowly eased into a pool, only to get thrown into the deep end. As you effortlessly beat the 6-year-olds and people who barely play the game in the first few ranks, only to hit a wall as you encounter the people who have been playing the game since the beginning and are way better than you, and the pay-to-win players. Want to beat these players? That'll be your entire life savings and months of your time. Log in with the code AmateurRider, and receive a bunch of resources that will last you about a day, one free 5-star champion that'll do well enough until you get to the harder content, and then it'll make you want to summon more. And a free crystal to summon absolute garbage, unless you are that one person who gets the best character in the game on the first try. And to that one person, on behalf of every player stuck in Gacha hell. Fuck you, buddy. So come and ruin yourself financially in Raid Shadow Legends. I started to think that wasn't actually sponsored. Tell me your thought in the comment. Anyways, into the chapter. Alright, let's get gameplay meeting 1 started. Fu said. Mai, Fu, and Ken were currently in Fu's room, sitting on the floor getting ready to talk about, of course, the game. In particular, they were going to discuss how the characters in-game would play. Mai and Ken were here since they were the gameplay designers, and Fu was here because he had detailed notes on everyone they would be adapting into the game. The two mini-devs had spent a good chunk of time explaining how the main gameplay mechanics work. In short, there would be a turn order line at the bottom of the screen, with characters on the line all traveling towards the end of it, and when they reached the end, it would be their turn. The speed at which they traveled along the line of course depended on the current speed of the character. Leveling up, rather than increasing your stats, would give you skills and skill points. Skills would do various things, from increasing your stats, unlocking new moves, and much more. And skill points would allow you to upgrade those skills as you please, and all the skills would be unique in some way. The only way to increase your stats would be with skills, equipment, unique abilities, or certain moves. Then of course, there were unique abilities and ultimates. Unique abilities were, as implied, unique abilities exclusive to a certain character. And ultimates were big flashy moves that could be used once they had enough mana, which was built up during battle. But that was all just the tip of the iceberg. Ken and Mai, mostly Mai, had put a ton of work into the game's mechanics, and it showed in the gameplay. So, let's get the 1A summons out of the way, Fu said, opening up his books. Summons in the game were essentially extra party members, who showed up in battle but had no impact on the story. You could have one summon character in the party at a time, to make sure the focus was on the actual characters from the game. Alright, let's get the easy ones out of the way first, Ken said. Kirishima, obviously, he's gonna be a tank. Let's give him a unique ability that reduces damage. Good idea, but how much? If it's by too much then he could become way too strong. Mai pointed out. I think at maximum he should reduce damage by 30%. And then we can give him a skill that'll reduce damage by 20% for a few turns. So he'll be able to reduce damage by 50% for a little bit. But how are we gonna upgrade it? If we just make it so it reduces more damage he'll be too good. Fu pointed out. Then instead of upgrading the damage reduction, we'll upgrade the number of turns the reduction lasts for, Mai said. Also we're gonna need to give him a skill that attracts aggro. One of Kirishima's attacks is called Red Counter, so we should also give him a counter skill, Fu explained. Any ideas for his ultimate? He just punches you a lot. Ken shrugged. Not the flashiest thing in the world, but not much else we can do. Alright, let's move on for now. Ida. Mai suggested. Well, obviously we make him super fast, Ken said. So we just give him a unique ability that makes him super fast. Actually, Ida's quirk gets stronger the more he runs, Fu explained. So why don't we make it so, that way he gets faster as the battle goes on. So he's really useful for long battles. Oh, I like that. It adds to the strategy part of the game. Mai said. What about his skills though? All Ida seems to do is run fast and kick people. Well, one of his special moves can be a kick that increases his speed, Fu added. And another. I guess he can run around the enemy and give them confusion, I guess. Ken shrugged. This is not as easy as I thought. Let's get back to him some other time, maybe he'll come up with a new move. Let's do Todoroki next. Well, obviously his special moves are gonna revolve around fire and ice and giving the burn and freeze status, Fu said. To be specific, Todoroki should specialize in area of effect attacks. He's at his best when he's facing large groups of weaker enemies, rather than one really strong enemy. So he'll have fire and ice AoE attacks that inflict status elements, and his ultimate is gonna be some combination of both. Mai summarized. But what about his unique ability? Well, Fu took a moment to contemplate. How about we make him immune to the freeze and burn statuses? That feels a kinda lame, Ken observed, raising an eyebrow at Fu's suggestion. Feels more like a regular skill. Well, if his other abilities are really good, then him having an only okay unique ability should be fine, Mai told him. Let's move on. Uraraka. I think her unique skill should be that whenever she attacks a grounded enemy, they gain the status flow, they become incapable of using physical attacks, and will be treated as flying enemies. And if she hits flying enemies, they become grounded, become immobile, and can't use physical attacks, and will be treated as grounded enemies. Oh, it references her gravity quirk. That's nice. Fu nodded. Aye lad, one of her special attacks should be her raining a bunch of boulders on the enemy. Definitely. Ken nodded. And her ultimate should be her jumping really high into the air and smashing into the opponent like a meteor. Alright, good. Actually, I have some good ideas from Hagakure, Fu said, moving to the next student. Hagakure? You mean Invisible Girl? Ken asked, giving him a skeptical look. Yeah. Invisible Girl. I was thinking for her, she has really bad stats but her unique ability gives her lots of evasion, and one of her skills inflicts blindness on the enemies. Fu explained. So she's kind of a luck-based character, where she's unlikely to get hit, and she can make it super hard for the opponents to hit your team, but if she gets hit it's gonna hurt a lot. And she can't do much damage. Oh, I get it. I can already see people online saying she's either useless or OP online. May said. Let's do another simple one. Aoyama. He uses laser attacks. He has AoE where he shoots lasers in all directions. And his ultimate is a big laser. What about his unique ability? Ken asked. How about he deals extra damage against dark enemies? Fu suggested. Since he's always going on about being glamorous and sparkly. That works. May agreed. Although I doubt Lady Kiba is going to like seeing her in-game self get destroyed by Aoyama of all people. She'll live. Fu deadpanned. Moving on. Let's keep going with the easy ones. Asui. She has lots of different abilities. First, let's make her unique ability water-based. Like she gets a stat buff, if she's in a water-filled environment, fighting a water-based enemy, or have a water-based ally. For one of her special moves, she could use camouflage to raise her evasion. She can camouflage. Ken shouted out in shock. Since when? Since recently, Fu answered. She's not super good at it yet. But she will be, so it's okay to put it in the game. Anyway, back to what I was saying. She could also use her mucus to cause paralysis. And she could use her tongue to drag down flying enemies. And of course, her ultimate is a really big kick. Well, it is her favorite move, Ken grumbled, recalling all the kicks to the head he'd endured while fighting her. Alright, so what are we gonna do about Ojiro? I asked. I mean, the guy is surprisingly strong. But he's still just a guy with a strong tail and martial arts. Ken sighed, trying to think of anything. Not really much potential for unique abilities. You got anything, Fu? Well, I knew Ojiro was gonna be difficult, so I did some thinking, Fu said. Maybe he'll get stat boots against humanoid enemies. Because martial arts are most effective against humanoid bodies. Ken honestly wasn't too hot on this. I mean, there aren't gonna be too many human-like enemies in the game, and that feels kinda weak. But I guess that's the best we've got. Anything else? Not really, Fu admitted. Maybe we can ask Ojiro to show us some martial arts moves and just turn those into skills. That's probably for the best, May said. Moving on, Sato. He's big, he's strong. He likes to bake. What do we get? Well, I was thinking he could be an offensive healer. He hits hard, and he heals with food. Fu explained. What do you think? An offensive healer? I like it. May agreed. So one of his special moves is a big hit. We can make a few more of them different kinds of food. What about his unique skill and ultimate? Well, Sato gets stronger the more sugar he eats, right? So for his unique skill, we can make it so that every time he heals himself, he gets a strength buff. And for his ultimate, he can eat a bunch of food, max heal himself, and then do a really strong attack. But afterward, he loses all of his strength buffs, because Sato gets tired if he overuses his quirk. Alright, that makes sense. Ken nodded. What about Tokoyami? We gotta do something cool for him. Well, the whole thing with him is that Dark Shadow gets stronger in the darkness or when Tokoyami gets mad. So, what if we gave him a big stat boost if he fights in dark places? Fu explained. And for his special moves, he could have a counter move, because if he gets hit, he gets mad, and then Dark Shadow retaliates. And his ultimate move could unleash Dark Shadow's full power for a few turns but puts the Berserk status on him, so he won't listen to you. Oh, that sounds perfect, Ken said, commending him. Oh, I just had a great idea for Jiro. Let's make her unique skill ignore 60% of the enemy's defense when she attacks. Because as someone who has a transformation with a sonic attack, I can say, it doesn't matter how defensive you are, those things will hurt. Yeah, but isn't that a bit too strong? Fu asked. Well, if we give her a low attack stat, then that should balance it out. And it'll make her a lot better against bosses with lots of defense. May explained. And we can give her some AoE attacks and attacks that inflict the stunned status. and her ultimate will be a huge sound wave that ignores defense and inflicts stun status on all enemies. Sounds good to me. Ken nodded. Oh. And we should give Mina something similar. Since she has acid, defense shouldn't matter that much. But we can't give her the same unique skill as Jiro, that wouldn't make it unique. Amei pointed out with a frown. Maybe we can give her a unique skill that causes all her attacks to lower the enemy's defense? Because she's using her acid to make holes in the enemy's defense? And maybe one of her attacks can ignore defense, and one of them can negate an attack. That sounds good, Fu said. Oh, and I figured out something for Kaminari. He has this human taser move, so let's give him a unique ability that makes it so if anyone hits him with a physical attack, they take a certain amount of damage. Well, I mean, you're punching a guy covered in lightning, so that works, Ken said. And let's make Kaminari have super powerful attacks, but he takes recoil damage after each attack. And he has a lot of AoE attacks, and attacks that inflict stun. So he's really good for short fights. And his ultimate attack is one massive attack that instantly takes him out of the battle. Neat. Fu nodded. So then. I can think of a few skills for him. An attack that drags flying enemies down. An attack that immobilizes enemies. But what about his unique ability? How about he can attack an enemy even if they're flying and out of range? Amei suggested. That works. That just leaves Shoji now. Fu explained. Honestly, I have no idea what we're gonna do with him. I mean, his quirk is mostly a search and rescue quirk. He has some super strength but not much, and we already have a ton of strong bruiser characters. So what do we do? There was a long pause, as each one of them took a few minutes to try and think about this conundrum. Then suddenly, Amei's eyes lit up and you could almost see the metaphorical light bulb above her head. Oh. Search. His unique ability can give you extra gold after a battle. Because he searched for it. Yeah. Fine. Ken shrugged. He wasn't sure he liked that, but he literally had no other ideas. Grrrr, everyone looked at Amei, whose stomach was the source of the growling. Well, I guess it's time to call the meeting to an end, Amei said calmly, ignoring the sound that just came out of her stomach. How do you eat so much and not gain weight? Ken asked. Lots, and lots of exercises, Amei explained, as she got up to go eat. Now, if you excuse me. Vrom. Amei ran out of the room at stunning speeds, charging towards the kitchen. She and Yami are good for each other. If only because they appreciate food so much. Fu said. He better learn how to cook for 10. Because each of them is gonna eat a 5-course meal 3 times a day. Ken half joked. I can't imagine what'll happen if they have kids, Fu added. Gonna need a freezer the size of a building. Then again, should we really be talking considering we can both eat more than them? Hey, I can only eat that much as wild mutt. Ken defended before his stomach also growled. All this talk about food me hungry, now. Well, me and Kyozai are always willing to eat. Fu sighed, closing his notebook. Let's go. Author's note. Alright, just want to say, this is not all of the skills and abilities going into the 1A characters in-game. The kids were just spitting some starting ideas. They'll continue building up ideas for 1A, but we won't see it. If you guys are interested, however, I could make some chapters of them making skills for the original characters theirself in Certo C's, and 1B. And maybe some boss design. Chapter 109, Girls' Night. It was finally time for a girls' night. That's right, everyone was here. Mina, Tsu, Okako, Jiro, Taru, Momo, Iri, Kiba, Amei Sansen, Kyaku, Shraku, Yonda, Nara, and even Fuku. Over video call. Because while Fuku had gotten better at being around more people, being around this many people was still a nope for her. They all gathered in one of the formerly empty rooms in the house, that Izuku had modified specifically for girls' night, and future girls' nights. The room had been painted red and pink and given a very comfortable carpet. There was a closet filled with sleeping bags, a huge TV, and a bunch of other things for nightly activities. "So is it time to talk about boys?" Deku started off eagerly. "What boys? Most of us never go outside to meet boys that aren't our brothers," Yonda pointed out. "Okako, Jiro, and Mei aren't in Island aren't getting out of it anytime soon." Tsu couldn't care less. Momo's so pure and sheltered, I doubt she's even had a crush before. Mina and Taru are so in love with other people's love lives, that Mina hasn't even noticed the guy who has a serious crush on her. "Wait, what?" Mina's eyes went wide. "Someone's crushing on me? Who?" "I'm not telling you." Yonda deadpanned. "But hopefully, that'll get the ball rolling. That poor boy's going to need all the support he can get for the Herculean task he's taken on. You kids have crazy advanced vocabulary," Taru pointed out. "Of course, we do. It makes us sound smarter," Yonda said, looking annoyed. "Now can we please not talk about romance?" "Geez girl, why do you sound so bitter?" Taru asked. "Because when you listen to people's thoughts, you hear things that no person should ever hear. And when I hit puberty my life is going to suck, so much. And I'd really rather not think about future relationships," Yonda answered, shivering in fear as she imagined her teen years. "Fair enough, let's talk about something else," Okako said swiftly. Because she too didn't want to talk about romance. She knew where that conversation would go. "Oh come on. We can't just not talk about romance at least a little bit," Taru whined. "Maybe instead of talking about boys we're into, we can talk about what kind of people we'd be interested in? And we can skip Yonda since she doesn't want to talk about it. That's still just talking about romance." Okako groaned, desperately hoping for a change of topic. "Well, the only fair way to decide this is with democracy," Mina decided. "All in favor of talking about this raise your hand." Mina, Taru, Shraku, and surprisingly Kyaku raised their hands. "All against?" Mina asked, a little disappointed by the lack of hands raised. Okako, Yonda, and Jiro raised their hands. "All right, 4 beats 3. Mina cheered. "You." All 3 girls were against this, internally groaned. "I feel that at the very least, we shouldn't make Jiro or Okako talk about this if they really are that against this," Momo told her. "Oh fine." Mina pouted for a second before giving Momo a mischievous grin. "Well, then you go, first Momo." "Huh?" Momo was a bit taken aback by the suddenness in which Mina thrust this on her. What would I look for in a romantic partner? Well, as Yonda assumed, I have never had a serious romantic interest in anyone before. And I haven't given such things any serious thought. But off the top of my head, I suppose I would like it if my romantic partner were, how do I put this? More independent. I would prefer a relationship where myself and this partner wouldn't have issues maintaining a healthy relationship while also being apart from each other and doing things independent of each for long periods. Of course, we would still frequently contact each other, and support each other, but we wouldn't feel the need to constantly be in each other's presence. Opposite. I want hugs, Sanson said, as she then wrapped herself around Okako. Okako laughed a little as she felt Sanson embrace her. I guess Sanson would want a relationship that's a lot more intimate. She'd probably be the kind of girl to glomp her partner whenever possible. Sanson nodded, giving her a bright grin. Hey, Sanson, I was wondering. Since you're made of, are you into boys or girls? Shraku asked, surprising everyone by how suddenly and nonchalantly she asked it. Sanson thought about that for a minute, making a cartoon finger and bringing it to her mouth, before making a question mark appear over her head and shrugging. I dunno. Wait, what is Sanson made of? I asked, looking extremely confused. I don't think your parents would appreciate us telling you, Sue answered bluntly. Also, it makes sense that you haven't really had time to figure that out, Sanson. After all, you haven't had much exposure to other people. Maybe we should go outside more, Nara said absent-mindedly. No thanks. Fuku, Kyaku, and Kiba said sharply. I have no need to look for a partner. Kiba continued, shaking her head as she folded her arms. Either it'll happen or it won't. I don't really care. As long as I have my family, I don't need much else. Oh no, I'm having a cute attack. Taru shouted as she clutched her chest and dramatically fell to the floor. Just too precious. Mina choked, doing the same thing. Anyway, guess I'll go next. Asui volunteered. I'm not really in a rush to be in a relationship. But if I was to find someone, I would like them to be dependable. Someone I can work with really easily, and have at my side without having to worry about them. I'd also like them to be good with kids. Oh? Tsu's gonna be a family woman, huh? Mina said teasingly. Always have been really. My parents have always been pretty busy, so most of the time, I've been the one who's had to take care of my younger siblings. Tsu explained. So I've been basically acting like a mom for most of my life. So in the future when I have kids, I'd like my spouse to be pulling their weight. Tsu ain't gonna take no slackers. Taru joked. Darn right, Tsu said bluntly, going along with the joke. Hey Shiraku, what's your ideal partner? Asked the spider girl curiously. Me? Well, I don't really want much out of a partner. I'd prefer someone creative. If they could draw, that would be wonderful. Specifically, I'd like them to have an eye for detail, and a decently high standard. Not a perfectionist necessarily, but not a perfectionist. But I don't want them to be annoying about it, or just unwilling to compromise. I'd also like them to be very affectionate, always willing to give out hugs but respectful of when I want to be alone. I don't want them to be too loud. I wouldn't mind if they were mute. Actually, they don't need to be, but I would personally see that as a plus. I'd like them to be calm and reasonable. And of course, they'd need to have an iron stomach to handle my cannibalism issue. Honestly speaking, I wouldn't mind if they didn't do much, so long as I enjoy working with them, and we make great art together. I thought you said you didn't want much? Asked, looking confused. Is that a lot to ask? Shiraku responded, looking equally confused. Girl knows what she wants. Can't blame her for that. Taru said, giving Shiraku an invisible high five. I wish I was like that. I have no idea what I'd want out of a partner. Fuku shyly admitted. Not that anyone would want to date Fuku. Oh dear sister, I'm sure there are many people who would love to be in a romantic relationship with you, Kiba told her kindly. You can write, draw, paint, cook, and even sew. You have so many good traits, and if anyone says otherwise, I will bludgeon them to death. Please don't. Okako, Tsu, Momo, and Fuku all said simultaneously. I guess those are good. But I don't think those are good enough traits to look over my quirk. Fuku said, with a saddened expression. Wait, what's her quirk? I asked. She releases a gas that makes you experience your worst nightmare while you're awake, Kiba explained casually like it was no big deal. Oh. I seemed shocked for a moment, before laughing a little. You know, you guys are all so friendly, I forget you could subject me to a fate worse than death. Yeah, you get over that surprisingly quickly, Taru agreed. But that is gonna make it a little hard to find someone, I admitted. But don't worry. One day I'm sure you'll find someone who can look past how scary your quirk is. They may even find the scary part of you attractive. Speaking from experience? Shiraku asked her cheekily, causing Mai to turn red. What about you, Taru? Tsu said, taking the attention off poor Mai. What do you want in a partner? Oh, Taru thought about the question, trying to find the answer she had surely thought of by now. And never did. I told you. She's too in love with other people's love lives. Yandere stated. She's not wrong, Taru admitted. I'm not really the most noticeable person around, so I don't really think about it too much. It's hard to be attractive when You are literally invisible. Believe me, people can still find invisible people attractive. Yonda told her, grimacing a bit as she recalled some of the thoughts she'd heard about Taru. Wait, really? Taru asked, no doubt wearing a shocked expression that no one could see, leaning towards Yonda. Oh yeah. Big time. Let's just say, sometimes not knowing what people look like makes them more attractive. Yonda explained. People have very active imaginations. Oh, I see, because they don't know what she looks like. They can imagine anything they want and lay those fantasies onto Taru, Momo explained. It's somewhat like Schrodinger's cat. Hear that, Taru, you're Schrodinger's waifu. Mina giggled, teasing Taru a bit. I am not sure how to feel about that, Taru answered honestly. It was a bit weird to think that people imagined what she could look like, and then got attracted to that, and imprinted that image of an imaginary girl onto her, then got attracted to her. I mean, at least people don't think I'm ugly. That's a plus? Definitely a plus, Nara told her, crossing her arm. Boys mostly care about looks, even if the girl's personality is crap. I remember one time Ken went out with this one girl, and she was just awful. She was controlling, manipulative, and she had this weird thing with dogs. She really only liked Ken in his Blitzwolfer form, and even when he was in his normal form, she treated him like a dog. And Ken just went along with it because she was cute. I only managed to convince him to break up with her when she started insisting he wear a collar. Wow. That girl knew what her kinks were, way too early. Mina thought. I'm guessing you're not into simps then? Kiba asked her, causing Mina and Taru to almost burst out laughing at hearing a little girl say simp. Not really, no. I don't really care about being in a relationship, I'd rather just focus on school and work. Nara explained broadly. Maybe one day when I've got everything in order, I'll get interested in relationships. I can definitely respect that. Jiro nodded. Also, are you guys bored of this yet? Because I am. But we still haven't heard from Iri or Kyaku, Mina argued. I don't really want to be in a relationship, Kyaku said curtly. Me neither. Iri shook her head. I just want someone who likes my snakes, explained simply. There they talked. Can we just move on? Jiro asked, sounding very annoyed. Mina pouted. Fine. What are we gonna talk about? I have an idea. Amei said, before turning to Kiba. Lady Kiba. How did the 1A videos do? How did everyone respond? Kiba gave them all a wide, prideful smile, and held her head up high. Well, I am pleased to say that the videos have done extraordinarily well. People from all over the world are interested to see what the students from the world's best hero school are capable of, and that attention has not only served the videos, but they've also brought attention to myself. Thanks to you all, my minion count has increased rapidly. That's great. You already had like 2 million subscribers. How much is it now? Amei asked. 5 million and counting. Kiba proclaimed proudly. What? Shouted Mina, Taru, Amei, and Fuku in shock, although most of the other girls seemed pretty surprised as well. That's insane. Taru shouted. Yeah, that's 3 million more people, said, taking a second to make sure her math was correct. All that just from us? Mina asked in surprise. I mean, I get that we're awesome, but geez. It's not too surprising if you think about it, Tsu spoke up. Kiba's channel has a lot of appeals. She's an OPC which a lot of people are curious about now thanks to Midoriya. She's and everyone that normally features on her channel are extremely powerful. She's the only channel that features UA students from the hero course, and she's also just really cute and fun to watch. I am not cute. I am fearsome and beautiful. Kiba huffed. Sorry, she's beautiful, and fun to watch. Tsu corrected. I'd be surprised if she doesn't get to 20 million eventually. 20 million. PFFT. Everyone in the entire world will one day become my minion. Soon all will kneel before me. Ah ha ha ha. Kiba laughed manically. Hail Lady Kiba! Amai, Mina, Taru, and Fuku cheered. Hail Lady Kiba! Okako and Tsu joined in, with big grins on their faces. Hail Lady Kiba! K joined in as well, just going along with it. Kiba's ego aside, what do people think about 1A? Shraku asked. The whole reason we filmed those was to make people like 1A more so they'd buy the game. Well, I think it worked pretty well, Kiba explained. Opinions on Ojiro have increased greatly, and people can actually remember his name now. The same goes for Sero. People have been moderately impressed with Sato, Shoji, Jiro, and Aoyama. Although people have been a bit disappointed in Kaminari because of how limited his quirk is. They are quite fond of Mina, not just because of her quirk, of how she uses it in style. Hee. Nice. Mina said, patting herself on the back. They're also really impressed with you too, Tsu, Kiba told the frog girl. People weren't expecting someone with a frog quirk to be so capable. Never underestimate a frog, Tsu told them. They look cute, but they are deadly predators. Lots of them look really cool and colorful. But they have super deadly poison, K said, excitedly jumping into the convection. I learned that in a book. Tsu had the snakes on her head, causing to giggle as her snakes gave off a pleasing hiss. People are also rather fond of Ida. After the How Fast Can Ida Go video, Kiba continued. Which is good because that video was an absolute pain to get right. Many people also like Kirishima's attitude, more so than his quirk. Of course, Tokoyami and Todoroki are some of the more talked about members of your class. People are quite enamored with their power. But, when it comes to the most talk about member of your class, no one comes close to Okako. Huh? Me? Okako asked, sounding slightly surprised. Am I really that much more popular? Well duh. Mina said. You're one of the 4 strongest people in class. And out of you, Bakugo, Todoroki, and Tokoyami, you're the most approachable. Yeah, not gonna lie, it's kind of hilarious how out of place you are with those 4, Jiro pointed out with a very amused smirk. Those 3 look like they're from an emo rock band. And then we have a cheery-looking marshmallow girl just vibing. Marshmallow girl? Okako scoffed, looking slightly offended. What does that mean? I don't know, you just look soft. Jiro shrugged. Not like fat or anything. Obviously you're ripped as heck, it's just when I look at you it feels like I'm looking at someone made of marshmallows and cotton candy. You just look soft. Like a pillow. Well, we gotta test that now. Mina stood up and looked down at Okako with a mischievous gleam in her eyes, and her arms in front of her, aimed at Okako. Everyone. Time for a group hug. Wait. Guys, not all at Okako didn't have time to get her words out, as Mina dived on top of her. Taru jumped in, and then Sansan, then Shraku, then Kiba, and lastly Kyaku. Yep. Can confirm. Nice and huggable. Mina giggled. Alright. That's enough. Okako said, before activating One for All. Full cowling. 10% Okako then started to rise up, everyone else falling off her as their combined weight was nothing compared to her strength. See what we mean? Mina asked as she and everyone got off the ground after sliding off. Okako. You're a powerhouse. It really shouldn't be surprising that you're attracting this much attention, Tsu told her bluntly. All that power and a friendly face. It kind of reminds me of All Might. Okako went stiff for a minute, not expecting that sudden comparison that hit a bit too close to the truth for her liking. Hey, Kiba, I just noticed you didn't tell us what people thought of Taru. Yonda pointed out, quickly changing the topic for Okako's sake. Oh right. My apologies. Kiba said to Taru. Although, unfortunately, I can't say people are talking about you that much. I'm kinda used to that. Don't worry about it, Lady K, Taru told her. Hey, are we gonna watch some movies or what? Jiro asked. Yeah. Let's do that. Okako said, quickly grabbing the remote, and quickly turning it on, trying to keep everyone from continuing to speak on this topic. Fortunately, it worked, and the rest of the night was spent watching movies and eating snacks. And most importantly, enjoying each other's company. Author's note: I know that girls talking about guys on girls' night is cliché, but with Mina, Taru, and Shruku all there, it was obviously gonna come up. Chapter 110, Performance Review. So a lot of people have been asking about Nice. Nice is still unconscious in the hospital and won't be back in the story until 1A leaves, post the League of Villains attack. After 1A leaves, we'll be reaching a new stretch of the story. A new milestone, so to speak. If you've noticed, the story will every now and then go through big changes in the status quo. When they got into the house, when 1A arrived, and we'll be reaching a new milestone when the employees start coming. Nice will be part of that milestone, along with Alice and her mother. Anyway, on to the story. Alrighty, then Aoyama. Let's get this review started, Izuku said, staring at the blonde-haired boy in front of him. It was time, Izuku decided, for a performance review. Izuku figured that since 1A's time here was swiftly coming to an end, he should inform them of how well they'd been doing. Perhaps it was a bit early considering they still had a little over half a week left, but Izuku figured that nothing super significant would happen in that short amount of time. And so the two sat in Izuku's office. Izuku was behind his desk with Aoyama sitting in front of it, ready to discuss this matter. I am glad you are no one for wasting time, Mr. Midoriya. Truly you are a magnifique man. Aoyama complimented. I do hope my performance was to your liking. I tried my very hardest. Well, it shows, Izuku said, giving him a fake smile. Aoyama was going to be the hardest out of everyone to review, considering he was the traitor and all. Because after that revelation came to light, Izuku couldn't look at Aoyama or his actions the same way again. He began to interpret anything he did as either a sign of suspicion or a call for help. Obviously, he couldn't let Aoyama know that, or even suspect it, so he had to fake it until he made it. You've done everything we've asked of you without complaint. And you haven't had any major incidents like Todoroki or Mina, Izuku summarized. Overall, a very solid performance. Aoyama did a little bow. Thank you very much, Monsieur Midoriya. I am glad my efforts have borne fruit. Well, you've been a great help, and we've been glad to have you, Izuku said, offering his hand, which Aoyama shook. Now, I don't want to take up any more of your time, you're free to go. Aoyama bowed, and swiftly took his leave. After Aoyama left, Izuku waited for a few seconds. Is he gone? Yes, father. He's gone. Yonda, who'd been under the desk the whole time, confirmed. He didn't suspect anything throughout the whole interview, father. Your performance fooled him completely. Izuku breathed a sigh of relief. Thank goddess. Thank you, Yonda. Now please go hide in my room. It might be suspicious for you to leave here right after Aoyama. Of course, father. Yonda said, getting out from under Izuku's desk and giving him a polite curtsy, with a huge grin on her face. I'm very glad that you utilized me for this task. I love it when my abilities are put to good use. Izuku sighed. He still really didn't want to involve her in this more than he needed to, but it was very important that Aoyama not suspect they knew he was a traitor, and since no one could see what was under his desk unless they were sitting where he was, this was relatively risk-free. Although it still encouraged her to get more into this matter than he'd like. Don't worry, father. Once Aoyama leaves, my part to play in this will be over. Yonda reassured him. Izuku sighed. I hope that's the case, Yonda. I really do. Well, Ashido, your performance here was almost perfect, Izuku said to the pink girl, who was now sitting in front of him as Aoyama had before. Honestly, I would have said you'd had the best performance here if it weren't for the candy thing, Mina said, blushing with embarrassment. Yeah, not my best moment. Yeah. Izuku sighed. However, Considering I didn't have the foresight to impose any regulations or rules on the candies and their usage, I'm going to take responsibility for this incident, and put it aside while speaking about your overall performance." Mina frowned at that. She didn't like that Izuku was blaming himself for something that was clearly her fault, but there was little she could do to convince him otherwise. She could only hope this therapist would help Izuku out of his self-deprecating habits. "Now, overall you've been a very big help in increasing morale around the house," Izuku continued. "You've worked to make sure everyone here has been in good spirits and kept all the kids busy with some fun activities. And most of the kids love you for it, and the ones that don't generally still like you at the very least. Except for Yonda," Izuku thought. "And Ken. Well, these kids have had enough of being sad, don't you think?" Mina asked him with a smile that just emitted positive vibes, which made Izuku smile back. "Yes. I completely agree." Izuku nodded. But back to the review. Of course, there was the Kyoku incident. "Your work there was simply spectacular. I am extremely grateful for you comforting her as you did, and allowing her to open up to you, and by extension, revealing some very important things to us, which is another reason I'm so willing to look past the candy thing." "Well, I have my upsides and downsides," Mina said. "On one hand, I'm a really positive, feel-good gal. On the other hand, I'm kinda dumb." Izuku wanted to argue against her calling herself dumb, but he couldn't find it within himself to lie to her at the moment. "Moving on to your potential employment, I see no real reason to not employ you," Izuku told her. "Even acknowledging your mistake with the candies, you're still a very kind-hearted person, who lifts the spirits of those around her, and applied for the job out of a genuine desire to make my children happy. And most importantly, I can be sure you're not secretly an assassin. Honestly, that's the most important part here. Given that someone with substantial influence and resources has been out to kill me, and gone to great lengths to try. I still can't believe someone hates you so much just because you're quirkless," Mina muttered in disgust. "It's unfortunate, but until we can apprehend the people responsible for those attacks, the number one thing I have to look for out of employees is that they won't try to kill me or take the kids," Izuku told her. This was true for both employees he'd hired before. Sorry, while she did leave a bad first impression, has had a history that had been recorded since she was born. He knew more about her than would like, and thus he knew she wouldn't try and kill him. Sai's history was less documented, but she was a pro-hero, and while Endeavor proved that they shouldn't give you a free pass, she at the very least seemed to be a better person than Endeavor, who always seemed kinda off, and she willingly left the glamorous hero life behind for moral reasons, so that had to say something about her trustability. Cole was American, so unless his assassins were an international power, which he doubted, they would have nothing to do with her. Not to mention Star and Stripe vouched for her, and All Might vouched for her, so, really he didn't have much reason not to trust her. And now Mina. She'd been in the house for this long and hadn't tried to kill him, and Yonda, despite disliking her, never suspected her of being an assassin. And given how Yonda was, if she didn't suspect her at all, then it was probably a good sign that she was innocent. "Now, I believe it would be a good time to discuss the terms of your employment," Izuku said, taking out a contract that he drafted not too long ago, that was about as thick as someone's finger. I'm not gonna have to read all that, am I?" Mina asked nervously. Izuku gave her an apologetic smile. "It's best if you did." Mina groaned as she gazed at the contract. The next hour was going to be very, very boring. "So Asui," Izuku started. "Call me Tsu." Tsu reminded him. It was now her turn in front of Izuku's desk. And she was confident she'd done well during her time here. "Right," teased Tsu. Izuku stuttered a bit, before regaining his professional composure. "So, you've done a wonderful job during your time here. Both in assisting in the children's education, and in playing with them. I think you might be one of Kiba's favorites." "I'm happy to hear that," Tsu responded. Speaking honestly, when I heard about you doing all this, I thought you were a little insane. But after working with all these children, I can start to see your logic a bit better. I haven't seen kids smile at me like this since my siblings were little, well, littler. But seeing this many children smile and laugh, after knowing all they've been through, it's an amazing feeling. It really is. Izuku had a look of pure elation on his face, at hearing someone say what he'd been feeling for so long. This job is its own reward. Right. I still think you're way in over your head. Tsu admitted. Taking on something like this, at 15. But I have to respect what you do, and for the most part how you've handled it. Excluding the waiting until you collapse to hire employees part, yeah. Izuku let out a long sigh. Speaking of which, I'd like to talk to you about maybe volunteering here every now and then. Tsu offered. I don't think I could take a dedicated job position here. I just don't think I have the time. But I'd still like to help around here every once in a while. That'd be great. Izuku responded. You're welcome to come here anytime you'd like. Thank you, Tsu said. I look forward to working with you in the future, Karo. Are you okay, Ida? You seem a bit stiff. Izuku asked the class rep, who was sitting opposed to him. I'm fine. Just slightly nervous. Ida admitted, trying to get somewhat comfortable in his chair. I fear that perhaps my performance could be lacking. What? No. Izuku told him firmly. Why would you think that? You've done a fantastic job interacting with the children. In particular, you've done good work preventing them from doing anything stupid. Like that time with Netsu in the fridge, or the time they tried to use Sanson as a slingshot to play real-life Angry Birds. Yes, it is alarming how many ridiculous ideas these children have, Ida said, his voice full of worry. And unfortunately, I can't stop all of them. No one can. Not really. Izuku reassured him. These kids are very chaotic, and their quirks play into that. Combine that with having a playground the size of an entire forest, and it's impossible to keep track of them all. And it's only going to get harder when there are even more of them. That sounds extremely tiring. Ida almost shivered at the thought of trying to maintain order, with that many, overly powerful children running around causing trouble. Taking on this responsibility has given me a greater appreciation for the amount of work you have to do to give these children a future. I can't comprehend the amount of fortitude it would require to do all this on your own. Thank you, Ida. I try my hardest. Izuku told him. Now, back to your performance review. As I said, you did a good job keeping the kids safe from themselves. You also did a great job teaching the kids during sparring. Particularly that lesson you gave Kiba and Nara about pacing themselves, very important. Yes. Making sure not to exhaust yourself before you achieve your goal, is a key element in not only running, but general hero work as well. Ida stated. I'm glad I had a chance to impart such knowledge to them during my time here. As am I. Izuku agreed. You've done everything we've asked of you, and more. I'd say your performance here was spectacular. Thank you for your praise, Midoriya. I value the praise of someone who works this hard for such a benevolent goal. Ida said, getting up and giving him a bow. I don't think my word matters that much, Izuku said, turning red and sheepishly smiling. But, thanks. So, how did I do? Okako, casually leaning on the desk, smiling at Izuku. I have a feeling you know, Okako. Izuku smiled back at her. You're still the favorite among most of the kids in your class. All right. Okako cheered, raising her arms up in celebration. I'm not losing that title to anyone anytime soon. If you keep visiting, I doubt you will, Izuku said. You have a knack for getting into people's hearts. As soon as Izuku said those words, everything froze. Eh? Okako took a second to process those words, her mind trying to judge if he'd really said that, and when she finally took those words in, her face went bright red. For Izuku things went much quicker, As soon he realized those words slipped out of his mouth, his brain realized what he'd done, and his face went just as red. And you're a very friendly person who's nice to be around and gets along with people really well. Izuku added very quickly, trying not to make that sound romantic. I mean you chosen by All Might to be his successor, and also that has to mean something, right? Why yeah, I mean, I guess I'm pretty likable. Thanks, Okako awkwardly laughed it off, trying to get rid of the awkward tension in the room, to no avail. Well, I think I summarized your performance pretty well. You're free to go, Izuku said, even though the meeting had only just started. Thanks. See ya, bye. Okako quickly ran out of the room, desperately trying to hide her red face, and heading straight towards wherever she could splash some cold water on her face. Meanwhile, Izuku just slammed his face onto his desk. Oh. Why After waiting several minutes to calm himself, Izuku moved on to the next person up for review, Ojiro. Now, Ojiro, I have to say, your stay here has been extremely productive, Izuku told him. The kids are very fond of your martial arts. I think they're just more amazed that I managed to get this far with such a lame quirk, Ojiro admitted. Well, I wouldn't say your quirk is lame, it's just not flashy, Izuku consoled him. You've been able to do some pretty cool stuff with it. Yeah, well, I'm just trying to do the best with what I've got. Ojiro shrugged, before looking a bit regretful. Although I really should stop complaining about my quirk in front of a quirkless guy, huh? Sorry if I was being insensitive. You're fine, Izuku told him, giving him a reassuring smile. We're both doing the best with what we've got. I think you are doing a lot more, to be honest, Ojiro told him, before looking around the room. All this came from one 15-year-old, with nothing to his name. Not even a quirk. It's pretty amazing. Don't cut yourself short, Izuku retorted. Your quirk doesn't shoot lasers, or let you take down a building, or tank car to the face, or anything like that. But you took the matter into your own hands and used martial arts to make it more useful. And with just that, you managed to get into the most exclusive hero school in the world. And in about 3 years, you're gonna be out there on the streets, saving lives. I think that's amazing. Has this review just turned into two guys complimenting each other? Ojiro asked with a bit of a laugh. I guess it has, Izuku said, joining in with the laughter. Well, I don't think I have much else to say, you're free to go. Alright, Kaminari. I'll be honest. I don't recall much of what you've actually done here, Izuku told him. Yeah, that's fair. Kaminari shrugged. I kinda felt like out of everyone I was the least useful here. My quirk's not great for sparing, I don't know how to do much. I think the only thing I did here besides basic chores was teach Kin how to play the guitar, and Jiro did half of that. Well, that's still something. And you did still do the chores without complaint. So it's not like you weren't helping, Izuku reassured him. And don't be too upset about not being super helpful. You were training to be a hero, not a babysitter. So it only makes sense that your skill set might not be super useful here. Guess that makes sense, Kaminari said with a thoughtful expression. Still wished I could have helped out more. After hearing about all the work you've done, would have been nice to lighten your load a bit more. Don't worry about that. Izuku shook his head. All the work I've been doing is stuff only I can do. At least for now. I have a secretary coming in from America. I think I'll be able to trust her with some of the more sensitive documents. From America? Kaminari asked, looking slightly shocked. I mean nothing against Americans, but why get someone from another country? I can't tell you that for confidential reasons, but let's just say I have my reasons, Izuku told him, before swiftly moving to the next topic. But back to what I was saying before, don't underestimate how useful another set of hands can be. You can clean, help deliver meals, carry things, And honestly, that's all I needed from you. Anything else was just extra. So if anything, helping Ken play guitar was just going above and beyond. Ah, you're flattering me too much, dude. Kaminari chuckled. You know, you're a great guy. I just don't get how people could treat you like shit for all those years. Izuku sighed. That's the power of poisonous beliefs. Well, I would have totality stuck up for you, dude, Kaminari told him. Izuku smiled. Thanks. That means a lot. Alright, well Kirishima, you definitely showed a lot of enthusiasm, Izuku told the red-haired boy across from him. Kirishima was currently bandaged up, after a sparring match with Kiba. Well, I tried my best. Have to go plus ultra with everything. Yeah. Although I'm not sure how I feel about you acting like a punching bag for the kids. Izuku winced, as he recalled the various times he'd seen Kirishima have to go to the med bay. Well, I don't really mean to be. But those kids are tough as hell, man. Kirishima responded. They're gonna be crazy when they get into UA. Villains aren't gonna stand a chance. Well, I hope that's the case. Izuku sighed. Honestly, I'm a bit worried. I know they're strong, but as much as I love heroes, and I love the idea of them going out and helping people, the idea of them putting themselves in danger by fighting villains, it scares me. Hey, don't worry, man, these kids are gonna be fine, Kirishima reassured him. Sanson's pretty much unkillable, you can't even fight her unless you have a quirk she's weak to. Kiba's just way too strong for anyone to handle, and she's only gonna get stronger. Fu and Kyozai are literally unkillable unless you're freaking Endeavor or something. Kai is an unstoppable Goliath, that only Uraraka, Bakugo, Todoroki, and Tokoyami can even fight. Netsu is literally untouchable. He's like the next Endeavor, and once Ken and Nara get a hold of their quirks, they'll be the ultimate Swiss Army knives of heroes. Izuku didn't look convinced. Of course, he knew the kids were strong, most villains wouldn't be able to beat them, even as children, let alone as fully fledged adult pro-heroes. But they were far from invincible. Kiba would get weaker as fights went on. In a prolonged fight against multiple villains, she could get outlasted, and fall. Kai was tough, but he was a massive target. He shuddered to think of what would happen if someone like Overhaul got his hands on him. Kai would have no way to dodge. Netsu could easily suffocate himself, leaving him open to attacks, if he didn't suffocate himself first. Ken and Nara had time limits, and once those times were reached, they were pretty much helpless. And while Fu and Kyozai, while hard to kill, could be worn down eventually. Or someone with a strong fire quirk could just destroy them outright. Heck, even Mina could kill them relatively quickly. But the main thing that worried him was All for One. The villain that crippled All Might, and seemingly got away. None of his children would stand a chance against that monster. But he didn't doubt they'd still fight him if someone was in danger. It was a thought that filled him with great pride, and even greater fear. Thank you, I feel much better now. Izuku lied, putting on his best fake smile. You're free to go, by the way, thank you for your help. Really? Didn't we just start? Kirishima asked. Well, there wasn't much to through, and there's no need to waste your time, Izuku told him. You're dismissed. Thank you. Kirishima gave him a confused look for a second, before shrugging it off, and taking his leave. Alright, see you later, man. Once Kirishima left, Izuku opened up his drawer and pulled out a calm candy bar, quickly took a bite, and felt his body ease up. You shouldn't worry like that, father, it's bad for your health. Yonda told him. She was still in his room, reading a book, but thus could still hear everything going on. Besides, All for One will be handled long before any of my brothers and sisters have to deal with him. All might beat him before, and I'm sure he'll be more through the next time around. And if he can't do it, remember, Okako's going to be even stronger than him. She'll take him down. Yeah, I have to believe in Okako and All Might. Izuku told himself. Thank you, Yonda. No problem, father. Now take some time to relax. Yonda told him. Well, first I have to finish this up. Izuku told her. 8 down. 11 to go. Well, that's the end of this chapter. Part 2 will continue with this, and then we'll move on to the next arc. Chapter 111, Performance Review Part 2. Well, Koda, I have to say your stay here has been a treat, Izuku told the large boy in front of him. Koda nodded. The poor boy looked horribly uncomfortable and was trying and failing to look Izuku in the eye. In particular has really appreciated your presence here. She does love animals, Izuku told him. Koda muttered. Izuku paused, and looked at the boy, seeing how horribly uncomfortable he was, and gave him a reassuring smile. You know what? You can go. Well, Sato, out of everyone here, you're in competition for being the biggest help, Izuku told him. Thanks. I tried my absolute best, you know. Sato smiled. The kids deserve at least a good meal after everything they've been through. Putting aside your cooking, which is amazing by the way, you've also helped out with sparring matches, heavy lifting, and of course, you've taught many of my children how to cook, Izuku told him. And honestly, while Okuko and Mina are the favorites among most the kids, I think you're Fuku's favorite. Which is a big achievement, considering her trust issues. It's an honor. She's a great kid, you know. Always trying to make stuff for her friends. And she's a real hard worker too, Sato told him. Best student I've had. Although I haven't really taught anyone cooking before I got here. Well, from what I hear, when Fuku focuses on something, nothing will stop here. I'm actually a bit concerned she might pull a me and overwork herself, Izuku said. I'm sure everyone else won't let that happen, Sato told him. They're all good kids that look out for each other. And after what happened to you, they'll be on high alert with stuff like that. I hope so. Izuku sighed, before refocusing. Well, back to your performance, like I said. You've done an excellent job. And I'm sure the kids will miss you greatly when you leave. I hear your parents run a bakery. I'll have to pay them a visit. You'd love it. My folks are even better at cooking than me. Those kids will be in for a treat, Sato said. Well, now I definitely have to pay them a visit, Izuku said, before extending his hand out. Well, I think that's all I have to say on the matter. Please continue to the good work while you're still here. And of course, you're always welcome here if you ever wish to pay us a visit. Thanks. I'll keep that in mind, Sato said, shaking his hand. Don't worry, I'll give it my all. Well, Shoji, you've done a good job at moving things around, Izuku told him, trying to come up with things to say. You don't have to force yourself. I know I haven't exactly been a strong presence here, Shoji told him. Anything I've done here could have been done by one of those giant apes. That's not true. They can't clean or hold anything fragile, Izuku explained. Your quirk makes cleaning the blood and flesh that gets all over the place much easier thanks to you. Out of context, that is a horrifying sentence, Shoji pointed out. Yeah. But that kind of thing happens a lot around here, Izuku sighed. Anyways, don't underestimate your value. Cleaning can be an absolute pain without you. With that said, you're dismissed. So Jiro, Izuku tried to think of what Jiro did while she was here. I heard you and Kaminari taught Ken and Iko how to play instruments. Yeah, it was no big deal. Jiro shrugged. You also helped Sansan with her vibration resistance training. That's great, Izuku added. Vibrations were another one of Sansan's weaknesses. Whatever hydrokinetic ability that allowed Sansan to move her body was rather weak. Meaning that Sansan could only really move if there was no strong resistance. Meaning things like vibrations, shockwaves, and even strong winds would leave her without control of her body. She was trying to find ways to combat this, which Jiro was a key factor in. I mean, I just stood there and blasted sonic waves at her. Still not that big of a deal, dude, Jiro said, casually. Well, I'm sure she appreciates it, Izuku told her. Keep helping her out. Will do, boss, Jiro said slightly sarcastically. Anything else? Not really. Izuku couldn't really find anything else to discuss. You're free to go. So Sero, I'd like to thank you for all taping off restricted areas. That's likely saved me a lot of time and money, Izuku told the odd-elbowed boy. Whenever an area needed to be restricted, normally because it needed to be repaired, Sero would put up his tape around the area, as a sign that no one should enter. Those areas should be entered without express permission from Izuku. Well, it's the least I could do, you know. Gotta help out where you can, Sero said. I mean, other than this, the swinging training is the only thing of note that I did here. I think the swinging training was very useful. Mobility during a fight, or even during a rescue, can be key, Izuku brought up. Villains can't hurt you if they can't touch you. That's what I'm hoping for, Sero responded, laughing a bit. I'd appreciate it if you could teach them more about using the environment, Izuku told him. It's a very important part of a fight, and there are few people who make use of it better than you. Well, when life gives you lemons. Sero shrugged. Okay, I think that's all I have to say here. Izuku stuck out his hand, which Sero shook. Keep up the good work. So how'd we do, boss? Dark Shadow asked, floating up to Izuku, while Tokoyami sat behind him. Well, most of what you've been doing is training with Kiba and Kai, Izuku explained. Izuku wasn't exaggerating. Most of Tokoyami's contribution, besides being another set of hands, was his sparring matches with Kiba and Kai, and those two specifically. This had to do with the fact that Dark Shadow had two issues when it came to being a sparring partner. If the fight took place during the day or in a well-lit area, then really any of the kids could overpower him. However, if it took place during the night or in a poorly lit area, then the kids could be in serious danger, seeing as Tokoyami may not be able to stop Dark Shadow before he does real damage to the kids. The only exceptions to this rule were Sansen, Netsu, Ken in his Heat Blast form, Kiba, and Kai. Sansen, Netsu, and Ken weren't really fights. Dark Shadow couldn't really hurt Sansen, so that was a pointless spar. And Netsu and Ken both beat Dark Shadow really easily. Meaning the only ones who could get anything out of a spar with Dark Shadow was Kai and Kiba. Although he would have Netsu nearby to stop the fight. I apologize that we couldn't be more useful during our time here, Tokoyami said, giving an apologetic bow. Izuku was starting to really get tired of hearing that. It's fine. Getting good sparring partners for Kai is a pain. It's good for Kiba to fight someone above her in strength. She needs experience in that department, Izuku told him. Other than that, another set of hands is always useful. And we have 2 sets. Dark Shadow said enthusiastically. That's right, Izuku said. Now, I think that's all we needed to go over. You two are free to go. I want to say again, Todoroki, how sorry I am for what Yonda did, Izuku said to start off the meeting. It's fine. I'm getting over it, Todoroki told him. Now are we going to get onto the review? Well, there's not much to say really, Izuku told him. There was the incident with Kiba, but given you lack of experience with people, and the incident later with Yonda, I'm not going to hold that against you. Other than that, all you did was laundry, which I appreciate, don't get me wrong. I know how painfully long and tedious that can be. But there isn't much to discuss. Alright, in that case, am I free to go? Todoroki asked. Yeah. Thank you for your time, Izuku told him. And once again, thank you for now suing me. I don't think I could. If I told my father about what Yonda did, and that it resulted in me finally using my fire, he'd most likely send you a check, Todoroki said. Well, if you need anything at all, remember that the Midoriya Foundation owes you a favor, Izuku told him. I'll keep that in mind, Todoroki said. before taking his leave. "Well, Hagakure, you've done a good job at keeping up morale alongside Mina, and helping out during lessons," Izuku told the invisible girl. "Well, I try my best," Taru said, repeating the same thing Izuku had been hearing all day. "But I really wish please don't say you wish you could do more." Izuku slumped onto his desk. "I've had to hear that over and over again. You guys did fine. You lightened the load a lot and let me recover from my collapse. Thank you." There was a brief moment of silence, as Taru was stunned by Izuku's sudden outburst. Eventually, however, Izuku picked his head back up. "I'm sorry for that, it's just. Today has been kind of stressful. I'm not used to being the boss, you could say. And I'm not really used to other people saying things like that." "You don't like other people devaluing themselves?" Taru asked, raising an invisible eyebrow. "Well, imagine how your mom and your Araka feel." "Oh. Right," Izuku realized his hypocrisy. "I guess I do say stuff like that a lot too. Is that how they feel when I say it? I really owe both of them an apology." "Okay. But a piece of advice, after you apologize, don't keep apologizing," Taru told him. "Thank you." Izuku groaned, picking himself up to continue to the review. "Overall, you've done a great job, thank you for your help. You're free to go." "Wow, that was short." "Come to think about it, these have all been pretty short," Taru noted. "I'll be honest, I have no idea what I'm doing," Izuku admitted. "I just figured this was something an employer should do, and tried it out. I don't think it's going too well." "Ah, well. At least you're trying." Taru tried to reassure him. "And that's what really matters." "Thank you, Hagakure. Keep up the good work," Izuku told her. Izuku and Shinso stared at each other for a while, neither of them knowing what to say for a while. "I'm willing to bet you forgot I was here at least a few times," Shinso spoke up. "You're not wrong," Izuku admitted. "But I guess that's desirable if you want to be an underground hero. Right?" "Yeah, sounds about right," Shinso responded. And then the silence returned. Shinso is another person whose contribution could be summed up as another pair of hands. And given Shinso's tendency to not stick out, Izuku really did have a hard time remembering he was here. "If you're not gonna say anything, I'm just gonna go," Shinso said, getting up to leave. "Yeah, that's probably for the best," Izuku told him. "When I first heard you'd be coming to work here, I was a bit worried, Mineta," Izuku explained. "But, you've done a great job of keeping your less admirable traits hidden from the children." "Well, I tried to stay away from them as much as possible," Mineta admitted with little shame. "Can't slip up and let them hear something they shouldn't if they're not around me, to begin with." "Well, at least you're aware of it," Izuku sighed. "Other than that, you've done a great job helping out with the paperwork. Now, I think we should address the elephant in the room." Mineta winced. "Do you mean the gacha thing?" "Yes, the gacha thing." Izuku deadpanned. "As much as I'm not happy about my children getting addicted to gambling, part of me felt like this was inevitable. It only takes one of them to learn about these games before it spreads to the entire house. At the very least, you gave me the chance to nip any bad spending habits in the bud and lay down some ground rules about these games. And give them a good lesson about spending. If anything, I'm less upset about you introducing them to these games and more upset that you didn't give them a proper warning about how these games can affect them. Or at least tell me that you exposed them to this." "Well, I didn't really think it was a big deal at the time." Mineta shrugged nervously. "Although in hindsight, yeah, I probably should have given you a heads up. Sorry. Just think about the consequences of your actions in the future," Izuku advised. "Got it, boss?" Mineta said. "All right, with that said, you are free to go," Izuku said. "So then, Yaozu, I have to say you have been an enormous help in keeping everything organized," Izuku told the last member of 1A except technically Rikugo, but he wasn't here. "And you've been a massive help in clearing up the paperwork." You've gotten through it as fast as I normally do. It was a shock to see how fast I managed to get through it all, Momo admitted. When I first saw the stack of papers I'd have to work through, I thought it would take me weeks. But after a couple of days, they were done. Unfortunately, they were swiftly replaced with an equally dense pile of papers. Yeah, when you are dealing with an operation as massive as this one, the paperwork never really ends. Izuku sighed. Even on my end with the massively reduced workload you guys afforded me, the papers just kept coming. Ugh. But back to the review, I also have to thank you for helping out with the lesson plans and tutoring, as well as Nara's personal lessons. It means so much to me that these kids are getting a good education. Yes, I was wondering if you had a replacement teacher in mind for when we leave? Momo asked. Well, yes actually, Izuku answered tentatively. I have my eye on someone. They're not someone who'd be expected for me to hire, so I'm more confident that they are not an assassin. However, the reason for them being unexpected is the same reason I'm a bit apprehensive to actually hire them. Are they dangerous? Momo asked, looking a bit worried. I don't think so, Izuku answered, sounding unsure. But they have the potential to be, and I have to find a way to check their intentions before I let them anywhere near the house. Can't you just hire a normal teacher? Momo asked. They sent a child assassin after me, Yarazu. Izuku reminded her. Whoever is after me, wants me dead. Badly. And is willing to use almost any tactic to achieve that. And if I were them, I would want to get my best men, set them up as teachers, and then have them kill me when they get here. And of course, to make sure they get hired, they would make it so they have the best resume, make them look the most appealing. So I can't afford to have a normal hiring method. Well, I've never had assassins after me before, so I suppose I can't really comment on that, Momo replied, still not sounding convinced. Just please be careful that in your attempts to avoid these assassins, you don't end up falling prey to unrelated dangers. Fair enough. Izuku nodded in agreement. Thank you for the advice, Yarazu. You may take your leave. Why did I think that was a good idea? Izuku groaned as he slumped into his couch, with a face full of remorse. I've never had employees before. How was I supposed to review them? Did I go too easy on them? Was I too harsh? What was I supposed to do? What was I supposed to say? Listening to Izuku vent, on the couch opposite to him, was his mother. Smiling patiently. I think you did fine for your first time, Izuku. These kids were all doing their best, and none of them really needed to be told anything in particular. Then what was the point of this? Izuku asked. Inko shrugged. There are lots of pointless things in business, Izuku. Things like this just kind of happen. Don't worry too much about it. It's not like it took a lot of their time, well except for Mina, but that was important, I guess. Still, I feel bad about calling them for something pointless. Izuku sighed. I guess I could give them another pay raise. Izuku, you can't give your employees a raise every time something slight inconvenient happens, Inko told him. If you do something you think slightly inconveniences your employees, stop. That's it. Well, if you say so. Izuku sighed. Oh, and Izuku, I wanted to tell you I'll be leaving around the same time the UA students do. Inko explained. Really? Izuku asked, looking a bit startled. It feels like we barely talked. Well, we've both been busy, Inko told him. And we both know I'm not exactly one to stand out, unlike Mitsuki. I wish I could stay longer, but I have work to do. I've seen the finances here, and I'm more sure now than ever that I need to grow my business as much as possible. That's fair. Izuku sighed. I'm gonna miss you, Mom. Oh, sweetheart. Inko got up, walked around the table, and hugged her son. I'm not gone yet. How about we go watch some of those All Might movies together like we used to? You know what? I'd like that. Alright, guys. Listen up. Mina shouted to her entire class, who had all gathered together. We don't have long until we leave, so we need to do something special. Let's get the party planning begin. Author's note. Alright, the next chapter is the beginning of the next arc. And then after this, we'll be getting ready for the big one. Also, I'll be honest, I didn't really want to do anything with Inko. You guys have probably noticed by now that she's barely appeared in this story. That's only because I only write her when I am out of the story for the most part, without killing her. However, she would still have to show up for stuff like Izuku's collapse. But since Inko as a person is not one that attracts attention, I can get away with ignoring her for the most part. It's not that I don't like her, it's just that I literally have nothing to write for her. Also man, this chapter was hard to write. Characters like Shinso and Shoji in particular are just really hard. Because while they probably could have some interesting things to talk about with Izuku, they're not just gonna bring it up out of the blue. And neither will Izuku. None of them are social butterflies really.